Hello everyone and welcome to Techstrong TV. Today is Monday, August 29th, and I hope y'all are having a great day so far. I'm going to be your host for the day, William Willis, and in today's show we're going to bring you some fantastic interviews with some incredible guests from around the world. So stay tuned. As always, I'll start off with our Techstrong News recap, filling you in on the biggest tech headlines that are making waves. Then, Alan is going to sit down with Nishant Patel, co-founder and CTO at Content Stack. Alan and Nishant are going to talk about how large brands can adapt and empower both technical and non-technical users to create digital transformations. Next, Alan will then talk to Rafael Uman, CEO at ASEAN, where Rafael will give us more information about ASEAN's new global marketplace, an extensive catalog of integrated partner solutions for the company's leading-edge platform. We are then airing episode 13 of The Open Mainframe, where hosts Alan Schimmel and John Murtick are joined by three mainframe thought leaders, Jeannie Glass of Virtual Z Computing, Derek Britton of Micro Focus, and Shara Owen Schwartz of Rocket Software, who will share their experience, personal perspectives, and how they are pushing diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. We are then giving you another chance to watch the new first episode of our series, Engineering the Change. This series follows the three winners of the Engineering the Change Scholarship as they tackle a 10-week intensive coding bootcamp and prepare themselves for careers in software engineering. We're then joined by our very own Cody J. Brown, who will hop on to tell us more about some of the upcoming webinars that we have in store for you. Next, we're going to go to KubeCon Cloud Native Con, where Mitch sat down with Victor Gamov, Principal Developer Advocate at Kong, and they talked about Kuma, an open source service mesh that supports every environment, including Kubernetes. Then, Mitch is going to interview PingCap CEO Max Louie to learn more about PingCap's innovative TIDB database, cloud technologies, as well as their commitment to open source, going back more than 7 years. And then we have back-to-back episodes of View with Vizard. In the first, Mike will interview Sonatype CEO Wayne Jackson and CTO Brian Fox, as they discuss what's required to make DevSecOps really work. Mike will then interview Everything Blockchain Inc. CEO Tony Jennings, where Tony will explain how Zero Trust IT will be achieved using a blockchain platform to secure data. Then we go to RSA, where Alan interviewed Rajesh Khajanchi, co-founder and CEO at Color Tokens, where the two talked about what Color Tokens does as a security vendor, as well as its zero trust approach. And finally, we go to Open Source Summit, where Alan met with Justin Hutchins, Director of Product Management at GitHub, where Justin explained why there is a point in which projects outgrow their individual creators and more governance is needed through a larger foundation. And that's what we have in store for you on this episode of Techstrong TV. Without further ado, let's get the show started. Enjoy. Hi again, everyone. Here are the headlines for August 29th. First up, Moderna is suing Pfizer over its coronavirus vaccine by stating they allegedly infringed on its mRNA technology. In the legal filing, Moderna states that Pfizer copied two of its elements, a chemical modification to the mRNA itself, and a bit of the virus that the vaccines train the body to recognize. Back in 2020, Moderna said it would not enforce its patents during the pandemic to allow for a stronger public health response. But now it wants Pfizer to respect its intellectual property rights. This legal dispute, though, should not affect vaccine availability, as Moderna has stated it is not looking to remove the Pfizer vaccine. It just wants compensation for its continued use of its technology. Next, T-Mobile has announced that it will use SpaceX's Starlink satellites to provide mobile users with network access in parts of the United States. T-Mobile would use these satellites alongside its existing cellular services to provide service where cell service currently does not exist. This feature should now be available to customers in a beta phase by the end of next year. This news comes as telecom companies are in a race to build up their 5G networks as quickly as they can to catch up to T-Mobile, which already has a head start due to its buyout of Sprint recently. In other news, while many companies are struggling due to slowing PC sales, Dell expects it to avoid a slowdown due to its focus on corporate clients. For the past 2 years, PC sales have boomed, but recently they have waned due to inflation. However, there is a growing trend of companies upgrading their equipment for hybrid work, with an estimation of commercial shipments of desktops and workstations to jump upwards to 16% in the third quarter. Companies such as Lenovo and Samsung have warned that chip demand and inflation would reduce revenue, but Dell, with half its revenue coming from enterprise sales, is expected to avoid this slump. Next in the news, an Ohio court ruled that colleges can't tap into a student's webcam to scan the room around during remote exams. The judge found that the room scanning feature of an e-proctoring service is an invasion of privacy. The case involved a student at Cleveland State University who stated that he did not have time to remove his personal documents, including tax forms, from his room prior to starting the exam. According to the judge, the practice of room scanning is in violation of the Fourth Amendment. There's a growing pushback on the e-proctoring with several other lawsuits as well as other campaigns. So it'll be interesting to see how EdTech deals with this issue of trying to balance academic integrity with preserving privacy rights of students. Next, Sony has recently announced it was raising the price of its PlayStation 5 game consoles following the economic pressures. Sony said it would increase the price of disk drive consoles to $550 from its original $500 price in Europe, Japan, and Britain. However, Sony said there would be no price increase in the United States, where it is currently in a battle with Microsoft's Xbox, as it is aggressively expanding its game subscription services. Sony has stated that the global inflation rates, currency trends, and supply chain issues have caused this, which shows that this is just another industry that has been affected by the current state of the economy. On DevOps.com, we have an article looking at how communities are reacting to Apple's new requirement of hybrid work. Apple has recently announced that it will be requiring employees to work in offices 3 days a week. Several members of the community give their personal feelings about this new mandatory hybrid work announcement. To learn more about the community's reactions, go to DevOps.com. On Digital CXO, we have an article looking at how you can make the most of your cloud investment. The pandemic really acted as a driver for digital transformation, with an increase of about 8.8% in cloud infrastructure spending. However, it is important that companies are not overspending on cloud investments. And this article states that 3 main factors to look for are trying to optimize your cloud investments, are tracking your allocation time, developing cost-effective management policies, and ensuring your organization's technological capabilities are set up be able to meet the needs of cloud. Finally, on Container Journal, we have an article looking at how the Technical Oversight Committee for Kubernetes released a combiner update to the cloud-native platform that adds more than 40 enhancements. One of these new enhancements includes a replacement to the current Pod Security Pod module. With this release, there is an emphasis on addressing 2 areas that have tended to lag behind as Kubernetes has been advanced: storage and security. This update hopes to fix some of these issues. To learn more about the new update on Kubernetes, go to Container Journal. And that's today's Techstrong News Recap.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Techstrong TV segment. My guest for this segment is Nishant Patel. Nishant's a pretty well-known person in the CMS world, content management systems, working with things like headless CMS for a decade. He is also with Content Stack, and he's going to tell us all about that in a second, as well as a little bit of his own journey. Hey, Nishant, welcome to Techstrong TV.
Alan, thank you. Thanks for having me here.
It's my pleasure. So, Nishant, I mentioned it. I referenced a little bit about kind of your background, but why don't I can't tell that story well. Why don't you tell people your story?
Yeah, sure. I'm Nishant Patel. I'm the co-founder and CTO at Content Stack, and Content Stack kind of came about 10 years ago. This is just right after the advent of the cloud. I was implementing CMSs, like the old CMSs, and trying to migrate them to the cloud. It was extremely painful from an ops perspective, from sort of the personas, that we were catering to, like the editors and the developers. It was pretty painful for them as well. And so we thought of an idea of just to kind of use the cloud and basically just write something from scratch. We started to build the CMS from scratch, like API first, completely in the cloud, where the developers don't have to worry about all the operational issues. And I think at some point that was coined headless, API first, headless CMS. So we were one of the pioneers in kind of changing this, the whole way of sort of managing content and then delivering content as well, because prior to the mobile world, it was just the web, and all these older CMSs were sort of catering to just the web channel. But with the API first headless CMS, you could kind of deliver that content to not just the web, but like mobile and kiosk and digital signage and whatever channel you want to. That's my background. I've been at it for 10 years. We're one of the pioneers of something called headless CMS, and it's a new way of managing and delivering content for big brands.
Absolutely. And just for people who maybe want to go take a quick dive in, is it contentstack.com?
Yes, yeah, it's www.contentstack.com.
Absolutely. And so Nishant, I've been using CMS systems for for a long time, right? Let's say that. And to me, when I hear the term headless CMS, it was about a CMS system that was designed to manage content that wasn't just like web pages and blogs.
Yeah.
Right. I think for me personally, when I first started using CMS is when, I've been blogging since like 2004, 2003, something like that.
Yeah.
And, I've always associated content management systems with my blogs, because with my blog, I had sort of that title page, and then I could put articles. I called them blogs, articles, whatever you want to call them, individual pieces of content, and they would be in chronological order, but they were searchable. You could group them by category. You can manage all the media that went into those articles and stuff like that. But you're right, it had a very web-centric view of the world, right? That people were going to view my content via the web page, whether you were looking at it on a mobile device or a desktop or what have you. You were looking at it, at a URL as a web page.
Right.
But with the world of headless CMS, we began to realize that, there's a crap load of different kinds of content and, content out there that organizations need to manage, and not just manage where they store them, but manage where they go to, right? Where they're accessible, how they're accessible. And so to me, that's really what headless CMS is. More than
I think.
Is that right?
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of a new way of managing content, but the omni-channel sort of story is key here. Before, and maybe just go a little bit into the technical stuff, where you had the front end, which is the web page. The code that you had to write for that was very tied to the content that you were entering in that system, right? So that whole CMS was kind of built as one. When you do that, it's hard to take that and put it into different channels like mobile, because the front end of the mobile is very different than the front end of the web, right? The look and feel, the aspect ratios, the layouts, all those things are different. So if you hard code it together with the content, you can't deliver that content to different channels. And I think headless CMS basically decoupled that, right? So you decouple the content. So in your case, you write blogs, so you can just write blogs and just write content and leave it up to the developers to figure out how to kind of tie that content with the different channels. And, the headless CMSs give you very easy tools to where you could, kind of create that front end experience completely disconnected from the content itself. This is it's a major change. And if you look at any brand today, you can't just be on the web. You got to be at least web and mobile. And then, there's our gaming customers, they're on consoles, and there's our retail customers, they put content on kiosks, but they don't want to create content for each and every channel. They just want to create the content once and then just deliver it to these different channels. So that was one big sort of benefit you got from headless CMS. And there's a couple of other benefits as well. It's basically, prior to the headless CMS world, CMS, you had to install individually and manage that. So there was a lot of operational cost and maintenance involved, and all those things are kind of, gone now with headless CMS.
Absolutely. Let's talk, I talked about my experiences, Nishant, but I'm small potatoes. Larger organizations are using headless CMS, large enterprises. Let's talk about maybe some of the unique challenges or ways they're utilizing this to go to market.
Yeah, so like in your case, you talk about the blog, right? That's one type of content. If you can take an example of, let's say, Riot Games, they have content that they have to constantly deliver to the consoles. So that's one use case, right? They could, they also use it for, let's say, the website. And the website has different sections. You definitely have the blog, but there's a bunch of other sort of pages that go on a website. You could have, on the e-commerce site, you could have, product data. So for every product, you want to enrich that product with a bunch of product data so you can deliver that to the web page. So what headless CMS allows you to do is you can model that content, whatever it is, whatever use case you have, you can kind of model that content. And we basically just provide a very simple form for the content editor to fill out in terms of, just take your sort of example again, a blog page, you have a title and a description and maybe a couple of other fields. But if you're sending some content to a gaming console, you might have different fields that you have to fill out. But for the editor experience, it's very simple. It's just a form. And we also provide a bunch of tooling around like content tooling, like spell check and all those sort of stuff that you typically see with like a word editor. We provide that as part of the editor experience. So for editors, it's pretty easy. They're just filling out a bunch of forms. And then for the developers, they take that and basically couple it with that front-end experience and deliver it wherever they want. So the whole tooling chain also becomes very easy. So if a brand comes to content, again, we go across the industries. It's not just one industry. And they, like an e-commerce vendor, their content is very different than a gaming vendor, right? So they can come into our product and then model their content however they want. and then just provide it to the editors to enter the content.
Absolutely. And that, look, that, I mean, it sounds simple or simplistic, but that's really what we want to be, right? We want to be able to just enter the content and let the editors do what they need to do with it, to display it and distribute it, whatever serves their, the corporate needs. There's the analytics aspect of it and security, to name two. Talk to us about Content Stack around that as well.
Yeah, so we work alongside a lot of our ecosystem partners, right? You want to work with sort of the search providers, right? You want to search your content. So there's companies that are specialized in that, like Algolia and Constructor. There's e-commerce vendors, so they provide sort of the cart experience. So we work with that, right? And so we this year we released something called automations, where we let customers basically automate things between our system, which is the content management, alongside all these ecosystem partners. And there's many, there's also the hosting side. So where do you host the front end experience? So there's companies like Vercel and Netlify and Gatsby. So we work alongside them as well, and provide all sort of the integrations and things you need to sort of make that whole stack work, right? So yeah, to your point, Content Stack is about managing and delivering content, but there's a bunch of other things that customers need. That there's companies out there that specialize in those needs, and we basically we provide all the integrations with those vendors. There's also sort of all the other things that you would want from a typical CMS, like workflows and governance and access controls and all that sort of stuff is also built in within the CMS. So you don't, if you think about the older systems, you had all those things that you still carry that forward with the headless CMS as well.
Absolutely. I mean, just because someone headless doesn't mean you kind of lost your head. You know what I mean? In terms of functionality in that way. So look, you're at this 10 years, Nishant. If I ask you to look ahead at the next 10, and 10 may be too far, 5, what else do you see sort of coming down that really could be, if not game changer, but, critically important to users?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things happening on the content space. So if you think about brands today, right, the way they get their message out, it's through content and through different channels. So what we're focused on is how to make that whole thing easy. There's one aspect which is with some of these brands, and during the pandemic it was very clear. Like for example, our gaming customers, the pandemic sort of March 12th or whenever it's kind of started, in 2 weeks, people are sitting at home playing games. So all of a sudden their content requests kind of just shot up, right? In the older days, the customer would have had to have the whole team kind of sit there and figure that out in literally like a day or two, right? In this world, like the headless CMS world, Content Stack kind of took care of it, and it just auto-scaled to that, right? So we're working on some of those technologies that just make this whole experience easy. So our customers should just be focused on, creating that unique content and the unique experiences. And we just want to provide the tooling that not just like helps them sort of enter the content into our system, but also helps with delivering the content as well as scaling. So none of that stuff has to be sort of our customer's problem. It's just, Content Stack just kind of figuring that out. And for the next 5 years, I just see this space just continue to sort of grow. Because content is basically how we as humans consume experiences. And, we talk about the metaverse, and in some ways, in a very simplistic way, you can just think of it as a different way of consuming content. you know. So we're looking at ways of how can we provide the tooling for our customers to provide those experiences in a new thing like metaverse as well.
You know what? We say it here all the time around here. It's all about the content.
Yep.
Hey, Nishant, we're about out of time, but for people now, they've heard about it. They may want to look more into content stack. It's www.contentstack.com, right?
Yep. www.contentstack.com.
Thank you.
No.
Hey, good luck with Content Stack. Keep us posted. Come back and give us an update.
Thanks, Alan. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on here.
My pleasure. Nishant Patel, Content Stack here on Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with our next guest.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome to another Techstrong TV interview. I've got a first-time guest and a new company to our audience here on Techstrong TV to talk to you about. I want to introduce you, first of all, to Rafael Uman. And Rafael, welcome to Techstrong TV.
Thank you, Alan. Very happy to be here.
Thank you. Rafael, I didn't give the company's name. If you don't mind, why don't you give us the company's name with a little background and maybe talk about, your position and your background as part of that.
Absolutely. So I'm the founder and CEO at Asion. So we are an edge compute platform that simplifies how you build better applications faster. Basically, we are now living in this, crazy new hyper-connected economy. It's, the best time ever to defy limits. There's a lot of things changing faster and faster. And Asion enables you to, basically build much better applications at scale, from a prototype to planet scale in a, very simple way. So my background is, and along as the other C levels and directors, we are all from the open source communities. We've been building, open source code and software companies for over 15 years now. So we love to build softwares that's really scale and are very performant. And over the past 10 years, we've been building Asion. So it's a purposely built platform for fixing some of the new problems we are facing today.
Excellent. This is very exciting for me. We every year we do our DevOps Experience virtual event for the last 5-6 years. I think it's coming up in November this year. And I not to say anything, before we've announced it, but DevOps at the edge computing, DevOps, at the edge and beyond, I think is going to be one of the taglines for the event this year. And because this is where the action's taking place. Right? Not that the cloud's gone away. Heck, people's data centers haven't gone away. There's still a ton of stuff in people's data centers that's not even in the cloud. But a lot of the action is now moving to sort of the next frontier, the edge. DevOps of things, the IoT devices and stuff attached at the edge. So it's an exciting area. Rafael, I'd like to understand what makes what you guys do sort of an edge platform or an edge tool versus anywhere else.
Yeah, so, different than a cloud provider, which basically enables you to run an application in a single data center, Asion enables you to build and run an application highly distributed, in multiple countries, in a lot of data centers simultaneously. So we have now over 100 data centers that enables you to, get to this, very high scalability and performance no matter where the users are. So the difference is basically that you don't need to manage the underlying infrastructure, similar to a cloud provider, but you are now running highly distributed, right? So it simplifies drastically how you build and operate the application. We like to say it's basically the end of the operating system. You don't need to learn either the underlying infrastructure, how to build and manage that, but now you don't even need to understand the operating system. So the developers have a much, let's say, simpler learning curve on how to adopt, an edge development platform like Asia.
Excellent, and this is actually, I feel like you're shilling for us here, right? But that's actually another topic or theme of this year's DevOps experience is what we're calling distributed DevOps, right? Which is, look, we're building software today that runs all over. It runs in widely distributed systems, multiple data centers, multiple clouds, right? We live in a work from anywhere, do anything from anywhere world. So therefore, our software, our applications, and how we develop those have to be able to do anything from anywhere. And this is a big theme.
And Alan, we like to think of actually a no-ops scene. So instead of thinking of how DevOps develop and operate with ASEAN, you don't even need to operate anything. It's actually only requiring you to develop, and sometimes even using a low-code or no-code approach. So it simplifies a lot on how you adopt new technologies without the need of operating anything. So, of course, you can interact with the platform using a CLI or APIs, making the perfect combination for a DevOps adoption. But you can literally, run the application without any operating efforts. So to get to a very high level of performance and availability simultaneously with algo scaling, that's a super interesting approach as well.
So this is a pet peeve of mine, the whole no ops thing. You could call it what you want. You could say the responsibility for it is shifted to someplace else or someone else or another company. But someone's got to be worried about running the damn thing, right? And it may be my application and I'm trusting you to run it, but someone's got to run it, and it has to run. So, when some people hear no ops and they think, oh, we're doing away with the ops function. No, we're just, there's an old song by The Who, meet the new boss, same as the old boss, right? Someone's doing it. It's just not me. But yeah, this is the world we're in there. Now, big open source folks, you guys are big open source. What is the platform itself open source? Talk to the open source aspect of this.
Yeah, so getting to the other thing, just to add, Alan, we've been building ASEAN for a decade. It's really amazing set of technologies that
another overnight success, 10 years in the making, right?
Exactly.
I know where you're coming from.
It's basically 10 years of pure intellectual property development. And one of the amazing things we built was this software-defined edge routing that enables us to run the best performing and most reliable network on the planet today. So we have experienced only 36 minutes of network availability over the past 10 years. So that's an amazing result for mission-critical applications that the majority of the applications we run. So to connect that with the ops versus DevOps, we have a full team of highly talented engineers here, DevOps in that case, running the platform and building those self-healing algorithms that can make that happen, right?
Yep.
So taking on the open source, our team has a lot of experience, writing kernel stuff, low level stuff from drivers to the Linux kernel, FreeBSD kernel. So we are, huge fans on how to navigate open source. Asion itself is open sourcing some of its, core components, especially the ones that enable you to run on your own premises. But along that, we have been committing a lot to the open source community on every project we work on. We have proprietary software, a lot of proprietary software, as the open source. Back then, when we started, did not have any, other options instead of, us building it. And now we are definitely doing a lot of helping a lot of different open source communities with our own software.
Excellent. You know what, Raphael, I have to apologize. I took us down a whole different road than some of the things we wanted to talk about, but it's time we talk about them, which is you guys recently announced the marketplace opening up, right? Share with our audience a little bit.
Yeah, so we are highly committed to improving the overall developer experience. As I mentioned, this no apps thing is one of the core, let's say, aspects of the platform that's simplifying how developers experience Asion. But along that, there's a lot of things that we want to give to developers so they can build better applications faster and faster, right? So along a recent hire on the developer experience side, we hired a chief developer experience officer. I think we are the first company in the world that made that type of position at C-level at the company. And we actually have been working on a marketplace in a way to simplify how third-party companies, independent software vendors, open source communities, and software developers working from home, how they can build applications, libraries, to run at the edge and experience our platform, the power of our platform to, either enable other developers to build or build their own applications. So the marketplace launch was a huge accomplishment from Asion. In under 2 weeks, we now have over 30 partners already integrated, from very simple solutions like A/B testing and security related things that simplifies how you protect your application. But, including some amazing new edge AI features like face recognition and, other advanced cybersecurity features. So the overall goal here is to, again, simplify the developer experience by giving them access to a set of templates and a set of, either open source or libraries that, make their life easier.
Excellent. Raphael, if you don't mind, for our audience who maybe wants to go check this out, how can they get to the marketplace?
Yeah, so you can basically go online to our website, www.asion.com, sign up for free. So we'll give you $300 in credit for you to use for over a year. And right there, you'll see the marketplace. You can look, available solutions. You can bring your own solution. If you're a partner, we'll be here to support you and, so you can bring your solution to the edge as well.
If you don't mind, spell Asion for us.
It's AZION.
.com.
.com.
Just want to make sure people get that. This is great. I mean, it is. Look, I'll invite you to. I'm on air here. I'm going to invite you. There's a call for speakers going up for this DevOps Experience event, and it's to the edge and beyond, right? And it's kind of right up the alley of what you're doing here with distributed and everything else. So, we think this is a very, very hot area, especially as we move forward now, starting to look already into 2023, right? And what does that mean? So, happy to have people go check that out. Raphael, you mentioned $300 in credits. Is the business model for Azion similar to a cloud where you're paying by CPU or storage or bandwidth or?
Exactly. How is it measured?
Yeah, the pricing model, it was built for helping companies scale from, the prototype to planet scale. So you start paying nothing until you get to, a specific amount of use that, makes you pay. So you're going to pay only for what you use. And of course, over time, if you use more, you pay less. So basically a similar model to cloud providers. We give you 100% of the features available right there when you sign up. So no hidden features, you get access to 100% of it. All the features you have, all the largest enterprises we have as customers have access, you have access as well. So you can build more advanced things out of the box.
Excellent.
Next question for you was, I was listening to you and there was a follow-up I definitely wanted to have with this. And in my mind, of course, went blank right now. Partners. Let's say because there are plenty of people who watch this who work for software vendors, tools. If they want to maybe get their products on the marketplace, how do they do that?
Yeah, we have on our website, you'll find a link to our marketplace. So just check that out, reach out to us. We have partners like Redware, very large global enterprises building their solutions on top of our Edge platform, along, smaller companies building specific features that they can either sell or give for free. So check the website, reach out to us. We'll be very happy to integrate. Our goal now is to add thousands and thousands of applications to the marketplace over the next few years.
Got it. Excellent. Hey, Raphael, I hope you enjoyed your first appearance here on Techstrong TV and that we can count on you coming back and keeping us up to date here.
Absolutely, Alan. Count on me. I'll be happy to join the DevOps as well.
Absolutely. We'll talk about that.
All right. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong TV. We'll be right back in just a moment with another guest.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Open Mainframe. The Open Mainframe is a monthly video series we do here on Techstrong TV, and we partner with our friends at the Open Mainframe Project from the Linux Foundation. On this series, they're kind enough to partner with us, and we discuss topics of interest to the open or to the mainframe community with a particular emphasis on the open mainframe community. We have what I think is going to be a very interesting topic to discuss today. It cuts across more than just the mainframe community. It cuts across more than just the technology world, but particularly in the technology world, it's an issue that we've taken on, and one of the reasons, quite frankly, I take pride in being in the technology industry is that I'm not saying we're perfect and we've licked this problem, but at least we're willing to acknowledge it and try. And in the mainframe, in the open mainframe world, as I think you're going to find out today, we have several initiatives and companies and groups that are hitting this topic head on. What is that topic? The topic is diversity, equality, inclusion in the mainframe community specifically. I've got a great panel I want to introduce you here to. I'm going to ask them each to kind of introduce themselves, if you don't mind. Let me start off with Shara Owens-Schwartz, who is with Rocket Software. Shara, welcome to the Open Mainframe. Please introduce yourself to the audience.
Thank you so much, Alan. Yes, my name is Shara Owens-Schwartz, and I am the Vice President of Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity at Rocket Software. And really, a part of my strategy, or really the foundation of my strategy at Rocket, is really rooted in equity, creating access to opportunities for everyone, which then opens up an environment for inclusion. It opens up an environment where diverse talent and ways of thinking are attracted to our organization, and where people can find belonging. And what we know about finding belonging and feeling included is the optimal environment where people thrive and innovate.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to hearing more here once we get rolling. But first, next, let me introduce our next member of the panel, and he's Derek Britton. Hey, Derek, welcome.
Hey, Alan, how's it going?
Good. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Derek Britton. I work for Micro Focus. My role there is Director of Communications and Brand Strategy in the marketing team. But my involvement with this conversation today is because of my involvement, my membership of the Open Mainframe project as a member of the COBOL working group. And I've been lucky enough to work with a team of very, very smart and diverse individuals over the last couple of years, talking about the COBOL language and looking at some of the challenges the language faces and the broader mainframe community faces at large. And it's come up again and again, the question mark over diversity and inclusion. And I've been lucky enough to take part in a couple of initiatives recently, and we'll be doing a presentation later on this week at the Share conference on that topic. So perfect timing for me to be invited along just to share with you what we'll be doing.
Absolutely, and thank you very much. Our third panel member, but certainly not the least, is Jeannie Glass. And Jeannie, welcome. And if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Sure. Hi, Alan. Thank you. And I'm here at Share with Derek as well. And I'm here as the founder of Virtual Z Computing, which is the first women-founded, women-owned mainframe software company in the history of the mainframe. I'm also here as a Native American woman and one of the founders of Making Strong Community Stronger that I work on with Shara and many others, which is the first DE&I initiative, collaborative initiative across the mainframe industry.
Fantastic. Can you just repeat, you and Shara work on an initiative called Making
Strong Community Stronger.
Okay, I just want people to make sure they get that. All right, then let me bring you to my last but not least, really, my co-host of the Open Mainframe Project. He's also the general manager of Open Mainframe Project from Linux Foundation, my friend John Murdoch. Hey, John.
Hey, Alan. I'm really excited about this topic. I mean, we've talked about diversity in the past. You know how personal of a topic this is to me, and I don't think we could have got much of a better of three people in mainframe together to have this conversation. So I'm really excited about this. We really pride a lot here at Open Mainframe and Linux Foundation as a whole in diversity. And, I think, Shara, you said it best, diverse groups and diverse communities, you get greater outcomes. We see it time and time again. So I'm really excited to hear about this and learn along the way.
So I think that is a given, and maybe the world doesn't readily acknowledge or know it yet, that diverse communities, you do get better outcomes. But nevertheless, I want to just lay some stuff out here. Number one, I think this conversation starts with an acknowledgement that we need programs. We need vice presidents of diversity and inclusion in many corporations. We need organizations like Make Communities, I'm going to mess it up because I'm old and
Strong communities stronger.
Make strong communities stronger, right? We need these things for a reason, because there has been roadblocks, there has been, whatever you want to call it, reasons why that we don't have more diversity. And we all bring our own personal life experiences to this, right? As we were talking off camera, my first exposure to computers, I was a little boy. I went to work with my mom. I'd go to work occasionally. She'd drag me into the city. I saw Star Wars when it first came out like that, actually. She sent me down to the movies. But she worked on mainframe. She was a single mom raising 4 kids, and in the summer when there was nothing for us to do, sometimes she'd let me tag along into the city at New York City, and she'd be working on her computer screen. You know, these were leased, right? You had lease time and stuff. And I thought it was very normal for women to work on computers. I didn't realize it was an exception probably then. Or maybe the kinds of roles they did were kind of limited in. It wasn't until I grew up later on in life that I realized, right, that there was this discrepancy perhaps. But I sit here, you know, I'm not in the position the three of you are in. I observe from my perch of where I am at Techstrong. Let's hear a little bit about, you know, I mean, obviously being a woman, you can say, well, I'm a woman and I see it. We get that. But what really kind of made this a passion for you? And again, Shara, if you don't mind, I'm going to start with you.
Because
wow, okay. So you want the backstory.
Yeah,
so,
that's what we do here.
Yes, absolutely. I can tell you that, right, this is not just work for me, it's who I am. And I grew up in segregated Boston, segregated Boston, where there were neighborhoods where I just was not welcome. And I understood that. My father became the first Black state senator in Massachusetts, and that was after having fought to carve out districts where even someone of color, it was even possible for them to be elected, right? And so I had front row seats to my father fighting for equity, fighting for a seat at the table, voice changing laws, right? So that people could have access to better jobs, housing, healthcare, you name it, right? So these are the types of conversations I had at my dinner table every day. It was the life that I lived. I was really immersed in justice, really. And so that continued to carry over into just who I am. And along my career, whether or not this was my exact focus in my career, I always carved out, regardless of the organization I was with, some kind of initiative where we focused on diversity, equity, inclusion, because I understood it from a systemic level, how systems, how organizations were created, and most times not with women in mind, not with people of color in mind, not with people with disabilities in mind, not with people from the LGBTQ plus communities in mind. And so really getting at the root of it. And when I talked a little bit earlier, I talked about, starting with that equity piece. And that's a part of sort of taking apart how did we construct this organization? What do our policies look like? Even things that many of us might take for granted, like family leave or how you build families, and is there support around that? So that's how I came to this. It is my passion. It's who I am, and that makes it gives me the fuel to continue to, piece by piece, pick it apart and try to create those environments that are inclusive for everyone. And I work at a global organization, and that is not a one size fits all. Inclusion, diversity, and even equity looks different depending upon where you are.
Agreed. Hey, Derek, you mentioned right off the top that, this whole thing you're doing at Share and a lot of what you're involved in, it's not even in your mainframe's the wrong word, in your main kind of thing of what you do at work, which is in marketing and so forth. What's driving it in for? What's driving that for you?
You're absolutely right, Alan. I have been a member of the Open Mainframe project for the last couple of years, but actually, if you throughout my whole career, in fact, if you cut me in half, it will just say COBOL in the ring, around the middle. And so I've never been too far detached from the language in whatever form my role has taken me. But what's interesting in the last couple of years, because of the work we've been attempting to do to evangelize and espouse the value of the COBOL language into the open mainframe community and more broadly, it became quite clear quite quickly, perhaps not surprisingly, that the people that we were talking with, the people that we were gaining access to, looked like a fairly overwhelmingly white male fraternity. And was personally quite disappointing, especially given the people I was working with in my immediate vicinity was a reasonably diverse group. We started looking at it, we started doing some research. Now, bearing in mind, back in the day, COBOL, the language, was invented by ladies, Jean Sammet, Grace Hopper, and a few others, and came together. The first technicians, before IT was even called IT, the first technicians, the first computer programmers was a generation of women. So something's gone wrong along the way. Something has gone horribly amiss, such that the inequality and the unconscious bias that society has permitted has manifested itself as this highly skewed set of ratios in the tech industry. And that interested me to the extent that I thought, if we're going to do something about it in the Open Mainframe project, we need to be active, and everybody needs to be active. And you might have noticed I am a white male, so I'm coming from the community that, to a certain extent, should be sharing a lot of the burden of responsibility to finding a resolution here, and not sitting quietly in the background saying, well, good luck, everybody, I hope it works out. And so I wanted to take a more active role, and I'm working with some very, very passionate people around me who have encouraged me and coached me along the way, actually. And I found out some incredible truths along the way about the diversity and inclusion challenge. And so, I just wanted to be part of the team that was able to tell the story.
I love it. Jeannie looks like she might have had some network problems. She'll be jumping back in. But until she does, I want to expand a little bit on that. Derek, I have a friend of mine, Olivia Rose. She's a CISO, because I come from the security side of things. And we have a very similar, look, this is not a mainframe issue, right? This is an issue we see throughout IT. We see throughout society. I come from segregated New York, Shara. I don't know how old. I'm probably older than you, because you look a lot younger than me. But we had this problem in New York. I lived that problem in New York, right? And off camera, we can talk about it. But anyway, what Olivia wrote in LinkedIn today, I thought really it struck home with me, which is not all white males are to blame here, or all white males are bad. Because I think part of what we got to watch out for is that whole patriarchy thing, and it's evil and it's rotten to the core and it needs to be overturned. Yes, but that doesn't mean we take all white males' heads off either, right? There are plenty of men like you, Derek, who are committed to helping make this situation better, who are committed to diversity and equality. There are plenty of organizations that have a lot of white men in them who go for that. I'm not saying that everyone's perfect. I'm not, there's certainly a lot of work that needs to get done. But you got to pick your friends where you can, and you don't throw out all those good apples with the bad apples.
If I may, Alan, I think
sure
that exactly where we were focusing on, how systemic is this an issue? And culturally, what's the attitude across these groups? Because I think, as we were talking about off camera, this, if you're going to cause significant change, whatever it may be, you need everybody on side. You're going to need the whole village to rally around it. And so we have to test the attitude and the appetite of everyone in the village. I read an absolutely absorbing article in Forbes.com. It's all about white men. Do they feel left out of diversity and inclusion programs, and why we should care? It's worth a read. The study talked about something like 42% of all surveyed white males in that report regard diversity as extremely important. So a very high quotient of those responding adamantly in support of doing something about the challenge. But within the same sample, 70% said they felt left out of DEI initiatives. And I'm going to quote the article here. I've just got it written down in front of me. The reason they gave was they feel like they are being, and I quote, blamed for the current state of affairs, or they are being shamed for having the privileges they have, which is an unsettling statistic, and tells us that there's a way to go in terms of, I think, engaging in the right way and finding ways for the whole community to work together. Now, the article didn't go on to explain or indeed assess whether or not that was a fair statement or not. The 70% is there for all to see, but that gap needs to be bridged. And so pulling these sessions together as we're doing this week at Share, and we'll talk about this to, well, frankly, anyone will listen because I think it's that important. We want to look at diversity from the perspective of the white male to get more white males inside the tent to engage in the right way with these programs, which are already up and running and already very successful, but to give it the volume and support that I think surely it's going to need to be truly successful.
Absolutely. Derek, if you don't mind, while we've got her, I've got to go to her. Jeannie, I'm sorry we didn't get a chance for you to talk about your passion and your story. So let's hear it.
Yeah, first I'll build a little bit on what Derek just said. I will say, as I mentioned earlier, being a founder of a female IT company is very unusual in and of itself, unfortunately. But I will tell you, I have had more support, encouragement, received more emails by far from men over women thanking me and saying that they have 3 daughters and they appreciate what I'm doing, keep going. So I do find that men are very concerned about and hopeful for the future and are very strong supporters of not only women in IT, but diversity at large. So Derek, just to recognize what you said there. My story, as I said, I'm of Native American heritage. I've only worked in the area of IT in my career. I graduated from college in 1986. So I've been doing this for a long time. And throughout my career, particularly as I moved up into senior and executive level positions in large corporations in this industry, I was always the only female executive in the room. There could be be, 20 VPs, SVPs getting together, and 19 would be white men, and then me. So this has just been my life, and an area that I'm also concerned about, not only for myself as really an aging worker at this point. I'm practically a minority or a protected citizen just in age alone, but for those behind me. And that's really a big part of what motivates me is my young nieces and my nephews and those coming up next, and trying to pave a path for them. And I will tell you that at Virtual Z, our first product is named Lozen. Lozen was a female Apache warrior. She was known for her bravery in battle and her fearlessness. And there was a lot of concern in my immediate family about having the first product at my company named after Native American, but our CTO, Vince Ray, is of Native American heritage as well. And one of my family members works for the Department of Indian Affairs. And I will tell you, I was concerned as well. And I consulted with him on using a Native American warrior as the product name. And he really helped provide some guidance, and I think helped us have the courage to move forward in the way that we have. So I think I just come at this from a lot of different angles in my life. And being a woman in IT and a bit of a unicorn in that way. And then as a female founder as well in the area of IT.
So I got an interesting question for this group here. And I think the one thing you all talked really, really well. Yes, Alan, check your watch on that one.
It was the over and under on when you were going to jump in. I won. Go ahead.
Go ahead. So, you all talk to your personal stories, which are extremely touching. I mean, and they resonate so much. I've talked with others that were in the space, and it resonates so much. But at the same time, it often, when you're kind of a little bit on this end of it, people kind of tend to look at it and say, "Oh, geez, it was easy the whole time." Like, you were this person in this space, and it all just came together, and but it's not easy. Like, there's battle wounds, there's struggles, there's losing battles, there are things like that. Help us kind of understand, like, what are sort of things like, you've really seen as you've been through this journey of driving diversity and inclusion and equality within the groups that you've been, where you've kind of just like hit these areas, like, I'm just going to hit my head against a wall and I can't get anywhere farther. Like, am I doing the right thing? And how have you got through that? And whoever wants to start on this question, go for it.
So I'd like to jump in and link your question kind of to what Derek was talking about earlier. White men feeling as if they're left out of the conversation, left out of the initiatives. And Alan, you pointed out, not all white men are bad. And I think that really this work has sort of been skewed in that way. I think from the men that I talk to, and I talk to a whole lot of white men, there is a sense of fear, as if they are sort of the target of diversity, equity, inclusion. And, my conversation goes like this: absolutely not. And yes, we need your help. It should not be on those who are being marginalized or even oppressed by systems. It shouldn't be solely their work to undo. And so it's that the white male, right, in the United States and many parts of the world absolutely sit in privilege and have no frame of reference for those who've been historically excluded. So we need your help. Let's be partners. Let's be co-conspirators, right? Go beyond being an ally where you're just kind of hanging out and saying, okay, give you some encouragement and support. No, let's be in this work together, identify the issues, and let's change them. Because I could be in a room with a white man, I could say the same thing, and as he, and he repeats it, and all of a sudden people listen. And it's just simply because that privilege that he brings to the room.
And you don't even realize it.
Yeah.
Well, that's the part you don't realize it because you haven't.
Shoes.
Right.
I agree.
Absolutely.
But look, not to get all political on you, but a lot of what you're talking about is driving the whole problems we have in this country around political divisions. That at the end of the day, there's a big thing about white men feeling threatened somehow by this kinds of stuff. That we're going to have more women in charge. That we're going to have more people of color in charge. That we're going to be a more diverse society. And it scares the bejesus out of. I don't want to curse online. It scares the heck out of them, right? And so we're going to leave politics out of it, but this is an issue, right? Certainly it's an issue. And quite frankly, even if white men aren't a majority, they're a sizable enough minority where you need some cooperation and inclusion and buy-in, and they got to be part of this if it's going to succeed, right? You can't be a rebel warrior all by yourself and take this on. You got to build coalitions here, and I think that's an important piece of it, right? Is building a coalition of the willing, a coalition of the people who say, I may not understand it, but I know it's there. I don't live it, but I know it's there, and I'm willing to do something about it. Derek, that sounds kind of where you are with it.
It is, Alan. And if I may, I mean, the point about the report was it was a worryingly high number of how many people feel left out. So the question really, the question that everyone should be posing to themselves is, what are we going to do about that? What's the hack? I don't want to give too much away of what I'm going to present this week, but what's the hack for the average white male to go, oh, well, I get it. I can get involved with that. I can buy into that. And it's not particularly complex. It does fundamentally boil down to accepting that an existing belief system, most people's way of looking at the world might need a reset. Because we all carry around with us levels of unconscious bias, potentially more than just that, but certainly unconscious bias. And for many organizations, it's a mandatory course that you have to go on nowadays, and it's only been implemented in the recent past. But it's quite eye-opening to see just how many preconceived notions and ideas and behaviors you can pull yourself up on nowadays, and that of colleagues. And that, for me, has been a watershed moment in the recent past where we've been able to identify just very basic behavioral patterns we see in everybody, not just white males, but obviously that's going to be an area of particular focus, where we can say to ourselves, well, we need to get over those microaggressions. Need to get over those affinity biases or those halo biases where people are just gravitating towards people who look and sound a bit like them. We need to get through all of those things. Absolutely. And that is the heart of any scalable solution.
John, I don't think, or at least I hope that people watching this don't need to see Jeannie or Shara's scars. They know the fact that they are where they are at this point in their lives, they've had to overcome. They've had to persevere, right? But I read a lot of stories recently about the American dream. Has the American dream died, right? And the American dream used to be something like you get to own a house and you live a middle-class life and you go on vacation. That's not really the American dream. The American dream was that your kids have a better life than you, right? And Jeannie, you said it. You're doing this. I graduated college in '81, so I'm a little ahead of you. We're done. Our careers, there's a lot more behind us than there is in front of us. This is about the next generation. This is about your nieces and your daughters and your sons. And whoever, right? This is about paying it forward. And so I'd like to, we probably have maybe 10 minutes left. We'll go over today. It's okay. What are we doing? What are we doing? You talked about some organizations. Derek, you're involved. Let's hear specifically now. And if it's mainframe focus, great. If it's not, also great. But let's hear, what are we doing to help this next generation?
Well, maybe I can talk to that a little bit. As I mentioned, we were talking earlier about 2 years ago, I called Greg Lotko at Broadcom. I was preparing for an interview as a female founder of an IT organization, software company. And I was researching DE&I programs through mainframe companies. And I found so many really impressive programs where there's executive sponsorship, there's significant funding, the results were impressive. But during my research, I realized it was too hard for me to find out about these programs. And so I picked up the phone and called Greg Lotko at Broadcom, who I really didn't know very well. I think sometimes people, when I say that, think I'm just a friend of Greg's, and I called my friend. I had only met him once. I really wrung my hands for a long time before I got up the courage to call him and ask him to work with me to do something to make these programs more visible and accessible in our industry, specifically here in the mainframe industry. So I finally got up enough courage and I called Greg. I said, hey, we met once before. My name is Jeannie Glass, and introduced myself and said, I'm researching D&I initiatives in the mainframe industry. I'm finding them. I know you have the Vitality program at Broadcom, and there's many other programs out there, but they're really best kept secrets. What if we all came together in our industry? We would still keep our separate programs, but what if we all came together and had an initiative around DE&I in the mainframe industry? Wouldn't our voice resonate louder? And he was fantastic. He immediately networked with his colleagues at IBM and Andy Eunice at Rocket, the founder of Rocket. And the four of us started an initiative now known as Making Our Strong Community Stronger. Shar and I worked together on that initiative. And our first session was a Zoom-based conversation around DE&I in the mainframe industry now a couple of years ago, as I said. And we didn't really know what the interest would be, but I think about 100 people registered, about 50 people showed up. And 2 years into it, our most recent webinar was on the topic of neurodiversity. Really, we called it Diversity You Can't See in the mainframe industry. And that was inspired by our listeners because the attendees and registrants had been increasing year over year at our virtual events. And we had a record-setting attendance on our July webinar on Diversity You Can't See. And I'm here at Share in Columbus, here with Derek. And we are holding a reception for Making Strong Communities Stronger tomorrow night. And there's just under 1,000 attendees registered for the entire Share conference here in Columbus. And 454 people have registered for the Making Strong Communities Stronger reception tomorrow night, which is nearly half of the conference. Largely, quite honestly, a white male audience. So a lot to the points that Derek is talking about and the important work that he's doing in this area, specific to white men as well. We're all in this together. And that nearly half of this conference wants to come to a reception on DE&I in the mainframe, I think really speaks to how hungry people are for this discussion, how they want to roll their sleeves up and participate actively in the discussion. And it's just been more than I ever could have imagined. I will tell you, when I opened up the registration list last night, my jaw dropped when I saw the number of people that have responded, and in a really great way. So I just think this is a really important topic. I appreciate John and Alan, you putting this conversation together to help us, expand the conversation, including white males. And Derek, appreciate the work that you're doing. And Shar, I couldn't agree more with the comments that you made as well. So thank you.
Shar?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're really looking at, and that I am really eager to interrupt, is this whole broken rung. It's this phenomenon for women on that sort of career ladder where they are not making it even to the management level at the same rates as men. And so at Rocket in particular, really trying to see, well, what's happening here. So we've instituted some leadership programs specifically in development programs specifically targeted toward women at the earlier stages in their career and mid-career, to really see how we can move women beyond that. And this is not just because women aren't ready. What we're doing simultaneously is interrupting that bias among managers. Why aren't women being, are men just more prepared at that point? I mean, that's a question mark, right? Which I don't believe is true, right? So allowing women to have more visibility, more access that sometimes is created with male relationships sort of organically. And so that's one of the things that we're doing. One thing that we're launching really soon is also looking at other underrepresented populations at Rocket and focusing on mentorship slash sponsorship. Those who don't have access and opportunity to folks at different levels of the organization to really get that exposure and some guidance. I was, talking with a fellow Rocketeer the other day. Is people sometimes don't know what they don't know. They need to see role models, right? They need to even understand how to initiate conversation, maybe with a more senior leader in the organization, so they can know what they're doing and what they're capable of. So those are two really concrete things that we're doing at Rocket. And also in that hiring process, to interrupt the bias there and to show, recruiters and hiring managers, if we are really looking to have a more diverse workforce, what does that mean when you're interviewing? Even what does your job description look like, right? What words are you using? Are people self-selecting out before we can even interview them? So those are some of the concrete things that we're doing at Rocket for folks who are coming up into our organization.
I love it. I feel obligated here to tell you something we're doing at Techstrong. We, for the last 2+ years, we sponsor something called Engineering the Change Scholarship. We work with a local coding school here in Boca Raton, Florida, called Boca Code. And we sponsor at least 1 up to 3 candidates every spring and fall, right? So twice a year, a cohort. And we, there's a whole, you have to write an essay and everything, apply for the scholarship. We pick 1 to 3 winners. But it's really underrepresented communities. So over the last 3 years, we have about 8 or 9 folks that we've done this with. Mostly women. Being here in South Florida, we tend to get a lot of folks from Haiti, Dominican Republic. We have 1 Ukrainian woman actually who won a few years ago. But it's been, and we help them with their job fair and they become full stack developers. It's probably one of the most gratifying things I do here, other than this show. It really has paid dividends in so many ways for us. We get so much out of it. We actually, this past year, we filmed the whole 12-week cohort that these people went through, and we have it up as just episode 1 is up right now as a kind of reality show. But it's really interesting to see this in action. Look, as I think I said in the beginning, one of the things I'm proud about being in the tech industry is we do, at least, is it navel gazing? I don't know, but at least we acknowledge this is an issue, and we have terrific people like you all, right, and more, who are hitting this. In cybersecurity, where I spent 20+ years, we have similar kinds of programs and people where we're trying to do something. Is there a lot more to do? Yeah. Go
But this is an ongoing process of learning. So we started at Making Strong Community Stronger with Virtual Z, IBM, Rocket Software, Broadcom. But today we have 7 organizations in this industry sponsoring, including Open Mainframe Project. Thank you, John and May and everybody. BMC, most recently, Tech Channel. So organizations are really investing in this area. And what I really enjoy about it, besides the 450 people registering to come to the session and feeling that energy around this space that's generated, is my own personal learning. And Shara is an expert in the area of DE&I. Her counterpart at BMC, Wendy Rentschler, is on our team now. She's an expert in the area of DE&I. And it is amazing, Derek, learning about your work. It's amazing to learn what's going on and to have experts like this bringing their knowledge and forever challenging me in terms of my own unconscious bias. Because just when I think I'm doing a good job of really catching myself, I catch myself again. And it's just an ongoing, I just don't know that we ever really, it doesn't feel like there's an end game. It feels like it's just an evolution, and we need to just keep this conversation going.
Absolutely. Guys, unfortunately, I need to end this particular conversation now because we're over time. But, one of the best open mainframe discussions we've had here on our series. I'd love maybe we could run it back again in a couple months. May and Jody, our producers, if you can make it happen. John, I was only giving you a hard time. I need you to participate in here. Otherwise, you're just an empty video screen on the Hollywood Squares board here, right?
Sure.
We need you. But Shara, Jeannie, Derek, thank you so much for really opening up a little bit in front of our audience here today, right? And giving them a little bit of your own stories and a little bit of bringing a little passion to this important issue. We're going to take a break. Thank you, all three of you. We're going to be back next month with another great topic for Open Mainframe. But until then, this is Alan Schimmel for the Open Mainframe Project from Linux Foundation, Techstrong Group. We'll speak to you soon.
The Engineering the Change Scholarship Program offers a life-changing opportunity for a winner from an underrepresented community to change their lives by becoming a full-stack software developer.
The background that you might see that it's a weakness, it's a strength in this field because everyone is constantly looking for people that are going to bring new ideas.
It's an intense 12-week course that is not for the timid.
For real. Who's mastering this right now? Because I sure am not.
So you guys are badass. Like as a class, you guys are crushing it.
You've got to be dedicated. You've got to be ready to do it. Your life has to be ready for it. Follow us as we go through this cohort's Engineering the Change winner on their journey to becoming full-stack engineers.
Welcome! Say with great power comes great responsibility.
Take it down to 3 finalists. Toria, I'm going to ask you, who really kind of stood out for you?
The 3 people that stood out to me the most was Stephanie and another woman named Carly and a man named Donald.
Mitchell, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree. Actually, I think those are 3 great candidates, and I mean, you know very well, right, what it takes to go through this process.
Look, I still love good written and oral skills. I like people who can speak well. I like people who really can write well.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you something. To your point about Stephanie, is it Stephanie Sanchez? Yeah, Stephanie Sanchez. Her essay was one of the best essays I've ever read in the 3 or 4 times we've done this.
Yeah.
Okay.
And bring her into
the golden
finals.
buzzer. Right?
So,
She's in.
The two other people you mentioned, to me, Carly epitomizes why we do this.
Yeah.
She said something like, her brothers could do it, why couldn't she? Mm-hmm. Right? Wasn't that in the essay?
Yeah.
And
That's something that stuck with me, especially as a woman.
Yeah.
Because I think that for her, she was like, if they can do it and there's not enough women in tech, like she was like, I can do it too. And I love that.
I say send Carly to Hollywood.
Golden buzzer?
Yeah. Donald Bazell, really nice guy. What I liked about his essay is his genuineness. Is that a word?
Yeah, like being genuine.
He's genuine.
Yeah.
Right? You got it from him. My only caveat on this is he really doesn't have any tech experience.
Yeah.
So if it's your vote and Mitchell, you don't object, I say let's give Donald the last ticket to Hollywood. And those are our 3 finalists for Engineering the Change. Let's bring them in for interviews and pick our winner.
Okay.
Sounds fun.
Sounds
All
good.
right. We'll see you on the next show.
Hey everybody, happy Monday. Cody J. Brown here with some upcoming programs from Techstrong Learning. First, tomorrow, Tuesday, August 30th at 11 a.m. Eastern, join our expert panel on DevOps.com with another edition of DevOps Unbound. This episode, a report on AI-augmented DevOps. Now you won't want to miss this conversation with Clint Sprague from Tricentis and Kosuke Kawaguchi, creator of Jenkins and co-CEO of Launchable. Following that, at 1 p.m. Eastern, Security Boulevard is hosting CISO Talk Masterclass, episode Catch Lightning in a Bottle. Now this series wraps up as we connect the dots from episodes 1 through 5 and discuss the reality that no plan is up to date or perfect, and new approaches to incident response are created when security incidents actually occur. So if you'd like to keep up with what's going on here at Techstrong Learning, feel free to follow us at any of our socials. We can be found on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. If you're not on social media very much, just go flip through our catalog of upcoming events and join us for a workshop that we've got coming up. So that is all I have for you today. But we do have plenty of upcoming and on-demand programs waiting for you over here at Techstrong Learning.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond, CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and MediaOps CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts, this is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, welcome back to KubeCon, Cloud Native Con. I'm joined by Victor Gemov, who is Principal Developer Advocate with Kong. Welcome.
Long-time listeners, first-time caller. It's great to be on the show.
Hey, we're glad to have you on. You made it through the screening.
Yes, that was great.
Awesome.
It's great to be here. Just to be here with the real people, not Zoom calls or whatnot.
So that's not like a screen. We're looking at it. Yeah, exactly. It's a little familiar and foreign at the same time.
Yeah,
right?
it feels a little bit weird. We're kind of like, we used to do this, but like after that we stopped, and then like, should we get back to this? Well, yeah.
Yeah, yesterday I was walking through and it's like, backpacks, t-shirts, developers. This is my people. I love this.
We're getting back. We're back. Yes.
It's great to be back. Well, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about Kong too.
Yes, I work as a principal developer advocate at Kong. At Kong, we're cloud API connectivity platform. Everything started at Kong as an API gateway, and Kong right now is roughly 32,000 stars on GitHub. It's a pretty popular API gateway in the world, also open source. And we're starting to exploring different aspects of the API connectivity and how we can help developers to build their apps and move their apps to production. And for the last couple years, we spent a lot of time on contributing to Kuma, which is a CNCF open source service mesh project. And also we have like developer tools. Insomnia, it's one of the tools that developers like to use to testing their APIs, like REST, gRPC, GraphQL, what have you. So that's, and I like to just like talk to people and try to help them to understand how they can solve the problems with our tools. Things around in service meshes, sometimes people think, oh, like I'm so confused, like what is that? What's the difference of the API gateway and the service mesh? How are they similar? So that's my type of conversation I have.
I was going to ask you that, if you would talk a little bit about that. I mean, I think we can envision the API gateway and how that might function and what that does for discovery and that kind of thing. How does that fit with service mesh? What's the connection there?
So I think an example
no pun intended, but
yeah. That's a good one. I think the example that I usually like to tell people depends on where you're coming from. So like if people more or less familiar with the API gateway or the idea of gateway as a enterprise integration pattern, like awesome book in the past, like learn different patterns, how you can like build the apps, and API gateway implementation. Gateway pattern is something that sits in between your consumers of your API and your API servers, and does some of the things that you didn't put into logic of your service for some reasons. API gateways provides the ways how you can like encrypt traffic, provided things around traffic shaping, rate limiting, caching, and all this type of stuff.
Authentication, access control.
Yeah. I like to compare this to, you go into a bar and there's a bouncer that's meeting you, and basically it can be this bouncer, and you can show him this ID and saying that, hey, I'm kind of like want to go inside, and it validates this. Even though your barman that sits, bartender, sits inside the bar, don't need to check the ID for everyone. So because it was checked on the gateway level, it means that you admit it and you're good to go. Mm-hmm. So once you get into the party during this thing, this is where you kind of like joining by someone that introduces you to the crowd. And this is where you kind of like joining the part of the mesh, and you getting this first like bootstrap configuration information about the topology. What are the services? There is the Gary, he is our order service. This is the Steve, he's our I don't know, like the email service. And you get this information like already inside this kind of like party. And after that, you just say, okay, so now I need to send the orders, so I will call the Gary, and after that, Gary will probably call the Steve to send emails to our users. So that's kind of like the idea where you have someone that sits in front of your traffic. It's a gateway, and the service mesh helps you to do discovery, gives you our communication secure because you're already inside and you can go freely talk to everyone, because like inside there no one else will be able to get in. So you have this secured communication using MTLS.
Well, and also, it's a great analogy, also that service mesh is constantly changing too. Yep. I mean, Gary, the order taker service, might be split. You might have new functionality that gets, either in that service or pulled off into another one. And you don't want to have to go find out about those changes, the hard way, right? Yeah. You want to be able to, have a place to go where your apps know, okay, that's the API that I use, or that API is now here, and I don't need to know that it's a different service, right? I'm still talking to it, that kind of thing. Well, what's there's a great vibe here. I think everybody's happy to be back together and be talking software. What's your sense of the vibe? I mean, what kind of cool things are happening?
So the cool things are happening, just like things are happening. That's the most cooler thing that actually happened. But from perspective of the community that I'm close to, like we did before KubeCon started, I was a part of Service MeshCon. I was helping with creating the program. I was a part of the program committee to help pick up some of the good talks, and that would be interesting and innovative talks from the different vendors and contributors from different open source projects to talk about the service mesh technology in general and maybe some of the specifics. It looks like this year there's a lot of conversation about how we can make service mesh more accessible for users, and different the vendors and different people have opinions about what components of the service mesh needs to be simplified. There's good talks around the core of most known service meshes, like this kind of a sidecar container that built on top of Envoy project. And one of the announcements that happened during the, literally on the day of the Service Mesh Con, is that Envoy community announced that they also will be providing a gateway API support. So Kubernetes Special Network Interest Group, Network Special Interest Group, working on designing this standard gateway API for Kubernetes that will allow to kind of like define things more granularly versus ingress. And now the two CNCF projects, Contour and Emissary, they will be joining forces, and they will be joining as a one. They're merging, and they will be joining as a kind of like a Envoy gateway. That's exciting news because, like with Kong, where kind of our gateway story was bread and butter, we were working together with this special interest group to shape the standard, but also we implemented this on the Kong side of things and on Kuma side of things as well. So we already implemented the Envoy-based gateways, and we implemented Kong-based gateways as well. So that's exciting things, and it looks like we were doing a lot of, and we're happy to join the movement and the help to contribute to those projects, and it's a pretty exciting future. I hope next year I will be sitting here and talking about like how this project was successful, and like adoption of Gateway API was quite broad, and like people like to use it. I can
see why you'd be happy.
Yeah, exactly.
It is. There's definitely a momentum increase around open source projects collaborating. Yep. Coming together, becoming one, or whatever it might be. Where there's open telemetry, on the observability side is a real successful
It's very
one.
much similar that happened between the open. It was like open census, and it was open tracing. Yeah, and they joined forces, and now we have an open telemetry.
And I think that's happening. We're seeing more and more of that, as opposed to there's some competing ideas too, but then there's also people realize there's a lot of commonality, and they'll come together and collaborate. And so it's just, we've kind of reaching a new level of collaboration through open source.
Still the trust in the humanity, and at least as a like a technology part of the world, we can, instead of fighting against some of the disagreements, like I don't know, like tabs versus spaces, we can have support both, and unless you have a strong opinion about this, so or like Vim versus Emacs or this type of stuff.
You just can't let it turn into the standards war. Some of those discussions are a little
right. Discussions can be really heated. Yes.
I don't want to go there. Well, cool. It's great that you stopped by. So talk about some of the things that folks can do if they go to the Kong website and what you have available for people to check out.
So essentially, personally, I work on like a video side of things. I love doing like YouTube videos, and if they go to Kong YouTube channel, I would appreciate if they go to Kong YouTube channel, Kong Inc.
Subscribe, like.
Yeah, like, subscribe, all these things, exactly. And on konghq.com, you can find like extensive documentation around the things. There's a documentation around the open source side of things. There will be some of the things marked as an enterprise. So Kong is a commercial open source company. We do a lot of open source work, but also we have the business side of the house that helps to fuel this. We like to call it as a kind of like a flywheel. So we use some of the innovations that we develop during the open source and put this as a kind of like a business side of things, and we use money from this to sponsor some of the open source work, like Kong Ingress Controller that I already mentioned, that has like a gateway API implementation. and the projects like Kuma and the projects like Insomnia, open source, and community like quite active there. So we're happy to have this kind of balance between the open source and commercial side of things.
I think that's key today, to be in the developer space. You've got to be credible in open source, as well as your own technology in which you
For
do.
us, open source was always part of DNA. Like the way how the Kong started, the founders were basically started the API marketplace side of business, and they were successfully sold this part of the business to Rapid API. I guess it's back in 2015-ish, and they open sourced the technology that was driving this thing. So they open sourced Kong, and since then, we just like only going onwards with the adoption, and people like to use it, and it's easy to use performance-wise. It's just great tool.
Part of software eating the world, right?
Yeah, exactly. yes, it is.
Well, Victor, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for sharing us a little bit about what's happening with the Envoy group and some of the open source projects and what Kong's doing.
Thank you for having me. It's great. It was nice to see you, Mitch. And my name is Victor Gamov, and as always, have a nice day. Subscribe.
Doesn't have any problem promoting himself, which is good. Yeah, go check out his stuff. Go check out Kong. Victor Gamov, principal developer advocate with Kong.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. We got more coming. We have fantastic interviews like Victor coming up next, so stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Same channel, same bat station. See you in a minute.
This is Techstrong TV.
Well, it's a great pleasure being joined by Max Louis. Max is co-founder and CEO of PingCap. Welcome, Max.
Hi, Mitch. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. So we're going to talk about data and database, one of my favorite topics. Before we do that, would you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and also tell us a little bit about PingCap?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm Max Liu, CEO and co-founder of PingCap, and our product is TiDB, T-I-D-B, which is an open source distributed database. I'm a software engineer for more than 15 years, and I still enjoy coding. Before I started PingCap, I spent a lot of my time, designing a table schema carefully and fixing those, database scaling issues and trying to make query faster. And I've seen so many engineers, developers wasting their time again and again doing the same thing. So we started the TiDB project to build a dream database, for engineers to handle scalability and, from terabytes of data to, petabytes of data to let developers focus on SQL and SQL, and for their business logic. So they can enjoy, sleep, so you can get more sleep, and you can still keep your hair, not like me, right? So you can enjoy coffee and or other fun. So and also many people found that our company name is interesting. PingCap is actually composed by two parts, Ping and Cap. So Cap is the CAP theorem, standings for consistency, availability, and partition tolerance. It's like a ideal case for a distributed database, right? So ping is just the network command while you're trying to, connecting to anything, you will ping it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I love this theorem so much. And we want to keep as close as possible approaching CAP. So here is where we use the name PingCap. Here is where the name comes from.
Makes total sense.
Yeah, it's quite technical, right?
Well, it carries meaning, and that's one of the great things. And I can sense already about your story, Max, is it's great to talk to fellow entrepreneurs who, it's one thing you would say, oh, that's a great idea. Let's go build a product for that. It's another thing when you've experienced that challenge. You've lived this problem. You've spent maybe many hours, maybe many years, right? Kind of being a developer, but trying to be a DBA and a developer and a data analyst and a data designer, but you're not really. You're a developer, right? You don't want all the hassles of all those other jobs. So how do you make it easier? How do you make it better for people? Which sounds like what you've tackled, what you've done with PingCap and with TiDB. Am I on path here?
Yeah, it's not easy.
Well, let's talk about the database market in general. And as mentioned to you earlier, I started doing database work long ago. It's not a new topic by any stretch. And of course, there's a lot of database products in the market. So what's unique and different about TiDB, and PingCap, and that helps you stand out? So why would the developer say, oh, that's what I want? I'd like to use TiDB because that does these things for me.
Well, that depends on the values you provide for your customers or developers, right? So, there are many key values that PingCap brings to our customers, users, and a wide range of the community, and of course through open source. So, first of all, we are open source believers. Open source is the core philosophy of PingCap. So, which is always leading the way of TiDB's development. So, besides TiDB, we also contribute a lot to the community. We have donated 2 open source projects to CNCF. One is TITV as a distributed key value storage, and the other is Chaos Mesh. So, as a chaos testing platform. Those projects can help other software developers to build a more scalable and more resilient system. While you are building a distributed system, you are trying to simulate physical faults, disk faults and network down and network recovery and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we need, chaos testing platform. So second, although, the database market, it's so crowded, right? So, but there is no such product can be used as a primary database to solve both transactional processing and analytical processing like TiDB. As a foundation, TiDB is designed as a scalable online transaction database. So it can easily support hundreds of terabytes to petabytes of data, while still serving millions of requests per second. So what's more, you can even run real-time analysis on the same database without moving the data from TiDB to some other OLAP data warehouse. Let's imagine if you are building a SaaS system, there is always a operational dashboard for your customer, right? Mm-hmm. While you log into any SaaS system, you get a summary, right? That is the operational dashboard. You need to generate that dashboard real time on the same database. Right? It is more natural for developers, to operate their data on the same source of truth.
Mm-hmm.
So this technology is called HTAP, Hybrid Transactional Processing and Analytical Processing. So the concept is not new, but the implementation in a cloud-native way is fresh. I think it's a disruptive trend in the database industry to make everyone's life and work easier.
It's really interesting. You combine those two things together, because oftentimes you thought of whether it's the old data warehousing or data lakes or different environments to do analytics in. But actually being able to do analytics on top of transactional applications and data on the same environment. What are some of the things you have to do to be able to handle those two different kinds of workloads? Because they can be very different, right? We want really fast transactional responses.
Yeah.
And, sometimes some pretty complex analytical questions that we're asking, right?
Yes, you're right. So we have two different storage engines, a row store and a columnar store. But with a smart optimizer on top of both row store and columnar store, right? So if there is a query, the optimizer will predict, is this a OLTP query, or is this a OLAP query? Or even better, it can be a hybrid query. We can query, just this, a single row from a row store and do some, aggregation on the columnar store. It's a little bit technical,
No, I get it. So, I assume your analytical queries might tend to be more by columnar versus your transactional by row. Is that a good generalization? It starts there.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And you can mix those and do hybrid of both. So is it views into the data, or is the data redundant so that they can handle different loads on the two types of storage, or is it just views into the same data?
Oh, so basically we have a replication algorithm. It is called a raft. So we use rafts to replicate data and store them both as a row store and a columnar store. So you have two copies, right? So then you can design an optimizer to choose what kind of data, which piece should I use, right?
Mm-hmm. So
just by physically replicating them.
All of that admin work to set up your analytics environment, essentially you get that with the database, right? It comes with it. You're doing the replication for them.
Yeah, from the user perspective, they operate on the same database. There is I don't need to build my skill set. I need to know how to do manual sharding for a OLTP database and using some kind of ETL tools to load the data to OLTP data warehouse, and then I need to learn different kind of SQL, different kind of query optimization, for two database to optimize it, right? And so many details. You need a totally different skill sets, right?
Tell us a little bit about the cloud part of this strategy. So are you primarily or only working in the cloud? You also work on premise in customers' own data centers? Where does TiDB live?
Well, this is a great question. We invest a lot into TiDB Cloud. TiDB Cloud is a cloud service on top of TiDB, so which allows us to provide faster time to value for our customers, and meanwhile further reduce the burden of maintenance. Mm-hmm. Maintaining a distributed system is kind of pain, right? Mm-hmm. So just like other open source infrastructure companies, such as Elastic, Confluent, and etc. So as a team behind TiDB, we treat the relationship between open source and cloud strategy seriously. So I would say that PingCap will ensure the core components of TiDB 100% open source, and without any functional loss in all versions. This is not just on the mouth. We actually achieve this by three actions. First, we build an active open source community. TiDB is backed by more than 800 contributors across multiple countries and industries. I actually built a demo on top of TiDB Cloud, which is called OSSinsight.io. So everyone can easily check any open source GitHub repositories with details of stars, contributions, commits, and you can even compare it to different projects, and so on and so forth. And for the demo itself, it is open source too. As I mentioned, we are in open source believers, right? So, and at the second, we make sure TidyB is environment agnostic. So the goal of TidyB is to achieve consistent user experience and a multiple deployment form. So basically, you can deploy TidyB, anywhere, in public cloud, in private cloud, in VMs, containers, and the bare metal. So third, I think this is the most important one. TidyB is designed as an open system, so we keep investing the integration with different other data ecosystems, such as Kafka, Flink, Spark, Snowflake, Datadog, and so on. So this openness and capability are also brought to our cloud service as well.
Very interesting. One of my questions is: are there different users for the analytics capabilities, and versus the high volume transaction, high speed transaction, or they tend to be the same groups of people? Is it primarily developers using both, or do you end up with different users for different capabilities?
Well, they're kind of different users. A database is so generic. For any digital native business company, they all have a database. They have different user scenarios. For those huge big companies, they enjoy the scalability of OLTP features. So they don't need to worry about how to scale my system. In those big companies, especially for internet companies, they have a big data team, right? They have a database team. So the database team care about the scalability of the database, but the big data system team, they care about the analysis of big data, right? But for those medium company and the startup, they just want a single database and they can handle everything. So I need so I don't need to hire more engineers. I have no resource for those small companies, right? A medium company. I have no resource to hire to build two different large team for OLTP database and for big data, right? So they want a simple technology, a simple database to solve everything. So it's different, right?
Makes sense. You mentioned distributed database. Then also, since you can do your own data replication across the environments, the column and row environments, I assume you can also do distribution across different locations and cloud providers or a cloud provider. So if you want to distribute it, closer to the edge or, closer to the data center or different geographic locations, that's also part of TidyB. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can deploy TidyB to different available zones. Nowadays it's basically a default capability for a distributed database. If you don't have this kind of capability, nobody's going to use it, right? So, but for edge functions, edge scenarios, currently we don't have the ability to support that. It's just everything on cloud or deployed by yourself.
I guess as the cloud comes closer to the edge, then you can be on the edge that way, right?
Yeah. As a open source database, TidyB chose to compatible with MySQL protocol. So all of those MySQL users, they don't need to do lots of migrations, right? They can simply just move the data to TidyB and everything just works. And MySQL is a TCP protocol, right? So usually if you are using some kind of scenarios, edge functions, and they are talking about using a HTTP protocol. So you need a kind of proxy and to route the request into TidyB Cloud.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, tell me a little bit about the open source versus the commercial version. What are the differences in the product? Are you doing newer features, kind of things that are more experimental, or that you're trying out and market first in the open source, or are there more management capabilities in the kind of paid for version? How do you distinguish the two?
Well, actually, there are three different versions. Let me explain a little bit more. So first one is TidyB Community Edition. So it has all the core capabilities so that developers can enjoy, the latest TidyB features and able to contribute back. So you can even get a nightly version, every day to enjoy the new features, right? So, and the second one, and for sure, is TidyB Cloud. So the new features are first released in the community version. And after, validation and polishing by a large number of community users, and they will come back into TidyB Cloud. And then what's next is a TidyB long-term support version. So this is kind of a most stable features and the professional service support by, PingCap provide for enterprise users. Mm-hmm. So this kind of users, they might not be interested in the new features immediately. I will wait, right? Wait until it's extremely stable. Maybe a year later, I will use it in production, right?
Makes sense. Maybe a finance company is someone in the finance industry or manufacturing.
Yeah, you're right, especially for those banks. So this release model actually helps us to get feedback faster from day-to-day operations of TidyB Cloud by ourselves and from the community, and that also creates a faster loop back to TidyB's roadmap. So the verified and polished features will be pushed to enterprise users through LTS release faster. This is kind of like a flywheel, right? So we can drive a faster time to value for both community users and enterprise users, no matter how TidyB is deployed. So to summarize, we have three released to different deployments, but has a consistent user experience in a process.
Excellent. Well, we should have more time. I'd love to hear more about it. I hope you'll come back. Where can folks find out more? Download the open source or try out the cloud version. How can they check things out with you?
Well, thank you, Mitch. Good to meet you. Great to talk to you. And then thank you.
You bet. And so folks can go to what? pingcap.com. Is that correct? Your website?
One thing. So I'm very excited to share that we will host the very first HTAP Summit on November 1st.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah, in Mountain View Bay Area. A very, meaningful venue, Computer History Museum, where I enjoyed a lot with so many historical moments and memories. So at the summit, we will, be joined by many data industry leaders and worldwide developers. Also include some of important customers from Asia, from Europe, and from the United States. To discuss disruption and innovation. And of course, all of you are more than welcome to check pingcap.com on the HTAP Summit page. And I do look forward, to connecting all of you in November.
Mm-hmm. Well, excellent. I hope you have a great conference on the 1st of November. And folks can
thank you very much.
As well as head over to PingCap and check out TidyB. Thanks again, Max. We appreciate you being with us. Max Louis, who is co-founder and CEO of PingCap. Thanks again, Max.
Thanks, Mitch.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Wayne Jackson, who's the CEO for Sonatype, and we're also joined by Brian Fox, who's their CTO. Wayne, welcome to the show.
My pleasure. Great to be here.
Brian?
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Our pleasure. So you guys just passed the $100 million annual revenue mark, so that's a congratulations to you folks. The question I would start out with, Wayne, is, we talk about DevSecOps and security software more now than ever. But my question is it really happening? Because I feel like a lot of times it's kind of like that Sunday sermon. Everybody went in and nodded their head and said, yeah, that was great. But then, like a couple hours later, life gets in the way and they forget about it. So, is it real? And what are you seeing in people do well?
I think it is becoming more real. I mean, as you may know, I was the CEO of SourceFire back in the 2000s, and so lived on the network side of the cyber world before coming here. I think there are still way too many AppSec functions that live in a crusty old silo where they're scanning things after the fact and passing reports over over some fence and hoping that behaviors change. But we are starting to see some real and impressive modernization of the AppSec function, where AppSec starts to weave itself and its ideas and its principles and even some of its tools into developer-oriented workflows and into the process of innovation. And in those organizations, we see real and genuine improvement, both in outcomes and in cultures.
Brian, we talk a lot about shifting left these days, and there seems to be a little bit of a debate about whether we want to shift left all the way to developers, or do we just want to kind of lean left into the DevOps workflow and embed more automation in there to handle security issues. What is the right approach? Do we need to push this all the way to the developers who seem to resist sometimes, or do we need to embed it into the DevOps workflow, or maybe a little bit of all the above?
Well, certainly it has to be embedded into the DevOps workflow, but you do need to push it to the developers, and maybe even a little further left of that if you're thinking about the supply chain. Ultimately, it's the developers who are going to have to act on any of these findings, regardless of if they're SCA component level findings, custom code level findings, right? And so not involving them, not empowering them, just perpetuates that friction that you alluded to. And so, yeah, you really do need to get all the way over. And the companies that we see that are most successful are the ones that integrate their application security practices with development. They may not always be, literally as integrated as, like, I think the DevOps, the original mentality would have, that the same team is full stack in that. But the more you can get application security into it and further and educate the developers and empower them with the right tools, the better off you'll be, because you don't have to chase that out later when the inevitable problem occurs and you're not prepared for it.
Wayne, we've seen a lot of high-profile breaches in the last year. The Biden administration has issued an executive order for federal agencies. Is all this coming to a head? Do you think enterprises are following suit and are also going to be reviewing their software supply chains more aggressively as a result? I mean, I think maybe this is the year of evaluation, and maybe next year is the year of doing, because ultimately people need budget to drive this, right?
I think the tide really started to turn with Equifax back in 2017. I think that was the sort of the watershed event where not only was there a high profile breach, but senior level executives lost their jobs. And so, we saw a meaningful shift in our business and in lots of ways that are measurable in accounting terms, like, time in procurement stage and that sort of thing. Yes, the White House's guidance has brought a lot of attention to it. Obviously, Log4j was a watershed event, probably more significant than Equifax. But I think this is, SCA in particular is crossing that sort of chasm of being a must-have part of the portfolio. The thing that I think is interesting, and Brian can touch on this, is that we're also seeing a shift in how at least the black hats are thinking about software supply chains and software supply chain vulnerability. It's not just about whether a 0-day disclosure and the existence of Log4j is something that represents an attack vector. It's the notion of actually creating attack vectors by malicious commits and other techniques like typo squatting. So I think this is really kind of early days in the way that we think about software supply chain integrity.
How smart are the bad guys getting, Brian? Because if I look at the number of exploits, most of them seem to be known vulnerabilities that we've known about for the better part of a decade. And I wonder if the bad guys are saying, why should we work so hard when we can just exploit what we already have? And maybe what's the point in going all the effort to track down a 0-day vulnerability when it's already pretty easy for them to do what they need to do already?
That blind spot is one that I think a lot of the industry shares. It's one that I've been trying to shine a light on, frankly, since 2017. In 2017, we saw the first of what are really the open source supply chain attacks. And interestingly, some of those early attacks were focused on open source publishers. The malware that was introduced was not trying to steal credit cards, Social Security, wasn't trying to crypto mine. It was literally trying to steal the password to publish things to the NPM and Python repository. That was a dramatic change in tact and escalation of the significance of this. And we've been talking about it and tracking it year over year. It's been part of our State of the Software Supply Chain reports. It was up 650% last year. And we're up this year another 500% on top of that. And these are intentionally malicious components being injected into the repositories designed to do harm as soon as the developers download them. I find so many people in the industry are completely unaware of this. They're worried about trying to inspect the software before they ship it. To make them safer, which is great. But in a world where your developers accidentally download the wrong component, they get a backdoor, that's completely invisible to most of the application security portfolio. And I like to use analogies. I think there's one that's relevant for this. If you think back to the 90s when browsers were inherently vulnerable, just going to a malicious website was enough to get you attacked. And the reason why they were successful for a long time was they relied on the behavior of people saying, they go to the website and they go, whoops, this isn't the website I meant to be at. They hit the back button, go to the right one, and never give two thoughts about the fact that they might have just been backdoored. Well, that's precisely what's happening right now. Developers can potentially download the wrong thing because the malicious component has an underscore where the legitimate one has a dash. It's a very simple thing to confuse. And they get backdoored. These components today are not even trying to pretend to be the legitimate component. They're not going to compile. They're not going to run the test. They fail almost immediately. And they're relying on that naive behavior of the developer saying, whoops, that's not the one I meant to have. Let me go get the official one. Then they carry on. Then they check that code in. So an application security program designed to look even as early as the continuous integration phase probably never sees that attack because it never got checked in, right? In the meantime, the developer machine might have been compromised, keys stolen, all these types of things. And in fact, earlier this week, we found more that we disclosed in Python that were, again, trying to steal developer credentials, right? So the attacks are actually quite sophisticated. Some of them have been multi-month efforts of social engineering to get into the right place. I just think the public is still woefully unprepared for the old boring things like Log4j, which was in fact just a bug latent for a long time. And that's the sad state, that if you're not able to deal with that, you have no chance of dealing with the malware situation that's happening right now.
Wayne, you guys are working with a lot of the open source community on a lot of these issues, and there's been efforts to launch or at least raise money to help the open source community and the maintainers secure these environments. But ultimately, what's the real challenge? Because it seems like a lot of the maintainers are saying it's not necessarily my job to be in charge of security and patching all this stuff, and when there's probably only 2 or 3 of them actually working on the project. So how do we kind of make open source software safe?
I'm not sure you can make any software safe. I think vendors like us can certainly provide tools and assistance and support for free to those interested in leveraging them, which we do and have for years. I think raising awareness about the importance of hygiene as a project quality objective is another one of those cultural things that open source committers and maintainers need to embrace. And I think we need to get better at helping folks pick better projects. For any given piece of functionality, there are dozens and often hundreds of similar looking open source projects, and helping developers and organizations make more thoughtful choices about which projects to use, I think is another one of those really important objectives that we all should have. We talk and have been talking here a lot about security, but ultimately what organizations are trying to get from open source is better innovation, faster innovation, leveraging other people's IP. Picking the right projects, having fewer similar things is really critical to long-term innovation, because it represents a smaller surface area to maintain. It improves things like developer portability. So that's another one of our really important research goals.
Yeah, I'd love to dovetail onto that if I can. In the wake of Log4j, I think a lot of people woke up and had maybe a slightly panicked knee-jerk reaction, which was something to the effect of surprise that so much critical infrastructure was in fact built on top of open source, a misunderstanding that everybody in open source were volunteers and therefore inexperienced, which is just clearly not true. And the expected reaction is, well, we need to fund them. We need to give them tools. We need to educate them. Yes, to all of those things. But that is going to take a long time before that really, perpetuates across the ecosystem. And part of the problem is all of that focus, I think, has a lot of companies sort of sitting back, waiting for the industry to solve it, when in fact they can start building the organizational understanding of the components they use today. Our customers have been doing it for over 10 years. And we've shown in the case of Log4j that when you do that, when you already know what components you're using, when Log4j happened, they were able to remediate tens of thousands of applications in the first 3 days. It was effectively a non-event if you already had, a recall-like capability. And I worry that while, yes, all of these efforts to help open source get better are important, I just worry it's causing people to be passive about this. And, a hyperbolic example is if you think about auto manufacturers and the airbag recalls. Imagine if instead of them saying, you know what, here's all the cars that are affected, we're fixing them, we're making this happen. Instead, they said, you know what, we're going to give more money to the airbag manufacturers, and we're going to teach them how to do a better job next time. The next versions of the cars will be better. And that's it. Like, they would be sued into oblivion. Like, we would laugh in their faces if that was the approach that they took, because we expect that physical goods and food manufacturers can do recalls. Why do we allow and accept that to be the state in our software? So it is kind of a ridiculous situation that we find ourselves in. And, we're trying to shine a light on that, because I think if people think about it that way, it's pretty obvious what you need to do as a company consuming open source.
Brian, speaking of obvious things, we give people tools sometimes, but even when we give them the tools, they don't always use them. And you'll hear people complain that it takes too long for the analysis to run, or the scan takes too long, and then they don't do it, and then by the time they do get around to it, the code base is huge and it takes even longer. So how do we kind of put this in a way that the developers will either actually do it themselves, or is there some way to automate it on their behalf? But can we get to some sort of workflow that they resist less?
Yeah, I think it's all of those things. There are workflows. You need to use tools that are designed for the way modern software development works. Tools that take 24 hours to do a scan and produce a book of findings are not modern, right? Tools that will produce the right effect are integrated, like we talked about before, further left into the development infrastructure, in pull requests, for example. That's some of the stuff that we do. We find that when findings, whether it's code quality or security or even SCA dependency problems, are introduced in the pull request, when the developer is in the mode of collecting feedback, usually from their peers, but why not from automation, it's 70% more likely to be fixed, right, in that moment, because they're in that motion of, I'm working on this, I'm looking at how to make it better. It's no different if a tool tells them to do that versus their trusted peer, right? They're going to fix it before it gets merged. And so, you need to be looking at tools from all different dimensions that are really focused on that aspect of it, because that's the way to get things fixed. You don't show up later with a book of things and tell developers all the things they got wrong.
There you go. Wayne, it also seems to me that there's something wrong with the way we go about budgeting for application security. The developers somehow think that the security team is going to fund that and do something with that. And I think the security team thinks the application developers are going to do that, because from their perspective, they're like, hey, we only have control over the things that we own, such as, network firewalls or whatever. And since we don't own or implement the application security tools, then, that belongs to somebody else's budget. So we need to have an adult conversation about how to fund application security.
That's a great point. And I think that there is not a buying center and a budget associated with, especially these modern application security efforts, is a signal of an emerging market, which you touched on earlier. This isn't a mature market where there is a buyer and there is a budget that's well understood across pretty much every enterprise. That said, the majority of our business is funded by the security budget. There's often a negotiation between the security function and the business units that are leveraging, or that need the leverage of the innovation. We also see in some more progressive organizations the establishment of a DevOps tooling and infrastructure function, especially in organizations that are going through digital transformations. So I think we are trending toward a more well-defined budget and a more well-defined buying center, but my guess is that that's still a fairly long way off.
Brian, we hear a lot about AI these days and security. Will AI save us from ourselves someday, or is that just all wishful thinking?
It's certainly a powerful way to get to automation. I mean, we've used ML/AI techniques to try to identify, to successfully identify some of that early malware that we talked about. We've blocked and reported as of yesterday somewhere north of 88,000 packages in the last year, these intentionally malicious things, and we did that by building models of what is typical for a project, similar to credit card fraud protection, to understand, when a transaction is happening in real time, that it seems uncharacteristic for this project or this person or this type of person. We did do the same thing, and it's been quite successful. And we're looking at other ways to leverage that technology. You see code authoring tools trying to do similar things that are using, AI to learn the most common patterns of code and auto suggest them. So yeah, I think that is going to be, a significant way down the path of of making this better. Much like some of the early safety systems in cars, that are sort of riding shotgun, trying to help, keep you in your lane and brake if you don't. I think that's the equivalent of what we're going to see for the first sets of tools. Beyond that, who knows? Maybe we get to a place where the machines take over and they're writing their own code. But we still have long ways to go before we're talking about that.
Yeah, I would just add to that, the scope and scale of the open source ecosystem is sufficiently vast that I don't think you can accumulate enough knowledge without using AI and ML to even think about solving some of these challenges. I mean, there are literally millions of open source projects and millions of open source committers. And Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're processing something on the order of 21,000 release events a day. And in order to help an enterprise think about the integrity of their software supply chains, you have to know the interesting attributes of literally every piece of open source and every version of open source that's observable. I mean, so these are just challenges that defy manual or human curation.
Brian, last question. What's that one piece of advice that you would give to people about how best to get started? Or the converse of that is, what's the one thing that makes you shake your head day in and day out?
There's a lot of them, but I think I always like to be provocative. I would leave people with the following tabletop. If I told you about a new vulnerability disclosure today, let's say the next Log4j was going to happen tomorrow, do you already have the ability to know exactly where that's used in your applications? Can you tell, in your portfolio anywhere? So many people couldn't even do that. Can you know exactly which applications, and can you track the remediation? And then how would you know or block your developers who made a typo mistake from getting a backdoor dropped on them when they download those components? If you don't have compelling answers to those right now, you need to get started. And you don't need to wait for the open source ecosystem to get better, because as long as the humans are writing the code, mistakes are going to happen. These will always be problems, no matter how much we educate them and how much we fund them. As the consumer, as especially businesses that are consumers of this, you can do something today. So if you can't answer those questions, then you need to get started.
All right. Hey, gentlemen, thanks for being on the show and sharing your knowledge and expertise.
My pleasure. Our pleasure. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
All right. And back to you guys in the studio.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with Tony Jennings, who is CEO for Everything Blockchain. We're going to be talking about how blockchain is going to be used for everything from helping you secure your data to backing up and recovery, and all kinds of new interesting things that are coming down the way as they've filed a couple of patents recently in this whole space. Tony, welcome to the show.
Good to be here, Mike. Thanks a lot. Happy Monday.
I don't think a lot of people know a lot about your company and what you guys are up to. So maybe kind of walk people through how you're using blockchain to kind of do some things that are outside of the whole cryptocurrency space, but you're using some of the fundamental techniques.
Yeah, happy to do that. So I think it's first and foremost, one of the first things we try to emphasize to people to help them understand is that we are not a crypto company. We've historically, helped with some crypto projects, and we've done some crypto plays. But at the end of the day, we're really not a crypto company. We're a blockchain platform. We're a technology platform, our blockchain happens to have some very special, abilities relative to traditional blockchain. I think traditional blockchain, you can think about, it really is ideally suited for things like cryptocurrency and DeFi and things like that, where you don't require what I would call, operating at the speed of business. You don't need to operate in near real time or anything like that. Our blockchain has the ability, the ability to operate, like we like to say, is at the speed of business in near real time for things that we say go beyond crypto, things like supply chain, or things like taking data off of IoT devices that need to operate in near real time. So being able to take data literally at the speed of business and shove it into a blockchain, so you have the ability to operate at that speed, but still have all the benefits and protections that blockchain afford that kind of data. So we're a little bit different in that our platform really is focused on those, let's call it off-label uses, for lack of a better word, for blockchain things, that really go beyond the traditional thinking of blockchain as really more of a cryptocurrency and that sort of thing.
So one of the things you guys did build was a drive. So how does that work, and why will that change the way we think about securing data?
Yeah. So EB Drive, I think you might have talked to Cedric about this particular one, in a previous interview. But and really, he's the technical genius behind this. All I can tell you is that because of the way our particular blockchain is architected, it has security built in. It's not a layer that's above or below our blockchain. It's actually built in by design to the blockchain. So, in addition to having the typical protections you get around, transparency, being tamper-proof, things like that with blockchain, we also have zero trust built in, literally built into the chain as well. The chain itself is duplicated in a number of different ways, such that it really turns out to be kind of tamper-proof and also ransomware-proof from that perspective. So it's something that we think will, be revolutionary or evolutionary, at least from a data storage perspective, because it will give you the ability to protect yourself against ransomware attacks. So I think that's really the talking point here, is that with our EB Drive technology, which is not in the market yet, we will have the ability to hopefully assist our customers with being able to be a lot more assured that their storage is going to be secure. It's going to be tamper-aware. It's going to be tamper-proof. It's going to be safe from ransomware as well.
And there's also now a data protection platform. So is that also under development, or where are we with that one?
No, our EB Control platform is out in the market now. It's been released. The best way to think about EB Control, think of it as a zero trust data access platform. We're focused initially really on small to medium businesses as we move toward enterprise later in the year. But it's really been designed to allow you to, let's say that I want to share a file with you, right? Typically, if I'm going to share a file with you, then I'm just going to have to trust you to protect that file with the same level of diligence that I would. I'm going to have to trust that your network's locked down and tight enough that someone's not going to break into your network and get hold of that file. With EB Control, though, allows me to encrypt that file with certain sorts of additional policy protections that live on top of that. So in other words, Mike, I'm going to send you a file. It's going to be encrypted. So it's not only encrypted on my system, it's encrypted on the way to your system. It's encrypted on your system as well. And it's even encrypted when you use that information or you view that information. Okay. So it's essentially protected in use. I'm going to send you this file before you're able to view that information. Before it decrypts, it's going to assure that you really are Mike Vizard. It's going to ask where you are, because I might have said, hey, I want to geofence this information, and only allowed to be viewed in certain geolocations. I'm going to time fence the file. I might say, hey, you've got a week to view this, and then it's not going to be viewable anymore. Or for whatever reason, I might decide that I've sent you this file today and I want to revoke your access tomorrow in real time. For whatever reason, I might decide I want to do that. And even if you are, Mike, in the right location, in the right time frames, I still might want to enforce data rights management such that you can view the file, but you can't forward it, you can't copy it, you can't print it, you can't save it, right? So it really allows me to be able to confidently send data to other people outside of my secure domain and understand that data will remain secure. So think of it as we put it into a container or a little portable vault that travels with that data no matter where it goes forever. That's the best way to think about it.
So you guys have this kind of fundamental technology and you're applying it to different use cases. So what else are you thinking about here? Are there other areas in security or other things outside of security that you may be looking at?
Yeah, I think we'll continue to be focused on blockchain and kind of cybersecurity and zero trust. When I think about zero trust and blockchain, they're both platforms of trust. That's really what they're all about, right? Allowing people that you don't necessarily have to trust, but the platform itself kind of conveys that trust, allows that trust to happen, allows me to understand that a transaction really took place, what that transaction looked like, allow me to be able to trust that data I'm sharing with somebody, that data, that security will remain. So it's really about being able to trust have platforms of trust in a world where trust isn't automatically necessarily guaranteed, right? So it allows us to kind of guarantee or at least have a platform to be able to do transactions and do business in a way that can be trusted. So we'll remain focused on that. I think as you look forward, more and more of our efforts will be focused on finding those use cases where the capabilities of our particular blockchain technology lend themselves to solving what I would call real world business problems. Things like, again, examples could be measuring methane gas, for instance, off of IoT sensors across production systems, where you need to know that the data coming off that system has not been tampered with, things like that, that it's that it's a single source of truth. It could be supply chain. It could be, medical records. It could be, stock exchanges. There could be a number of areas where you need to have, a very performant, a very resilient type of a blockchain platform, and we'll be looking for those use cases in the business world where that makes sense.
What exactly is your blockchain platform, and how is it different from some of the ones that people are more familiar with?
Yeah. Typically, when you think about blockchain, you're thinking about public blockchain projects where literally anybody can jump on board that platform and do transactions. We're a little bit different in that we are a private blockchain technology. We have a proprietary way of doing arriving at consensus, which happens very, very fast. Again, typically our blockchain can add blocks and query information out literally in sub-millisecond speed, so literally almost in real time. It's also, because of the consensus algorithm we use, it's very green relative to other blockchains that may use proof of work or something like that. So computationally, it's very, very lean relative to typical blockchain solutions. So it's therefore we like to call it a green solution. So it's very fast, it's very green, it's hyper secure in that, again, we built security into this from day one. The very fact that it's a private blockchain actually also lends to the security as well. But we've essentially, built this from scratch to be very, very secure from the beginning. So what we were looking for is something that was hyper secure, very quick, very green computationally, that we could actually, and very accessible. It's something that essentially you integrate on it with a very SQL-like language, so it's very pluggable. So what we like to think of this as, we believe there's a lot of businesses and potential customers out there who intuitively know that blockchain can help them. They just may not know how to approach solving that problem. How do they get access to a blockchain? How do they use blockchain to solve their problem? So what we think we have is a platform that is approachable, I guess, or accessible is one way to think about it, as well as having these natural, abilities that naturally lend itself to working in those, like I said, real world business environments. That's probably the best way I can describe it at this point.
Do you think people are somewhat intimidated by blockchain right now, and they're not quite ready to think about how they're going to apply it? Or are we on the cusp of a shift here where people are going to be saying, hey, what can't we apply blockchain to?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think there's a lot of truth to that, Mike. I think it's like encryption. You mentioned encryption, mentioned blockchain. That's typically kind of mathematical gobbledygook to a lot of folks. Obviously, the more it's out there, I think that's shifting a bit. But I still think right now there's not a lot of folks that really understand blockchain to a great degree. I think they understand a lot of the benefits of blockchain, but certainly in terms of really understanding the technology, how they can access that technology, how it can really help solve their problems. I think there's still a lot of work to be done on our end and by the industry to help people understand. At the end of the day, blockchain is really just a database, right? It's all it really is. It just happens to be a database that is tamper-proof and offers a degree of transparency. So when you think about it in those terms, and if you stop thinking about blockchain, the technology, when you stop thinking about things like the encryption and things like that go into it, all the technical complexity, at the end of the day, it's simply just a very simple ledger. It's a simple database, right? What we've been able to do is take the database portion of that and make it much more, akin to, leading edge, modern, database database technology that just also happens to, provide data, those blockchain protections. So we've just kind of taken that concept of the database, taken it to the next level. But at the end of the day, we try to help people understand it's really at the end of the day just a special type of a database. That's all it really is.
All right, you heard it here first, folks. We may be able to get around some of the sins of the past in terms of how we manage data, because we have a new set of database technologies coming down. And the good news is we've seen them before and we know how they work. We're just starting to figure out how to use them differently. Tony, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right, back to you guys in the studio.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, we're back here live, wrapping up our last day of coverage at RSA. We've just got a few more hours here before we'll shut the lights on this year's broadcast. I'm really happy to be joined by Rajesh Khazanchi. Did I get that close?
Absolutely.
Thanks, Rajesh. Rajesh is with Color Tokens. They are a company that plays in the zero trust space, and if there's one term that has become the buzzword for RSA 2022,
it's zero trust.
It's zero trust. Yeah. You can't walk out there without seeing zero trust. But interestingly, I've spoken to a lot of people who are not security folks who are here for their first RSA, and they're like, "Well, what exactly is zero trust? How can all of these companies be doing zero trust? There can't be 500 companies doing."
That's right.
Well, zero trust means different things to different people. But Rajesh, before we jump into that, wanted to give you a chance to explain to our audience maybe a little bit about you,
sure,
and a little bit about Color Tokens.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me here,
My
Alan.
pleasure.
I'm Rajesh Khazanchi. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Color Tokens, and we've been in the business for about 6+ years.
Yep.
Started actually around 7 years now, 2015, and the fundamental construct was that if you look at today's world, cloud is becoming your data center.
Yes.
And if you have networks, essentially, internet is your networks.
Yes.
Gone are the days like MPLS lines and T1 lines.
And thank God. Good riddance.
Yes,
but go ahead.
absolutely. And applications have transformed from a monolithic, from physical virtual, from that stage to containerized and the cloud services. So there's a huge transformational change, and people are accessing these applications across the globe. And we felt like compute, network, and storage has made a phenomenal progress,
yes,
but security has left behind. Security is lagging. And
so I would disagree just a little bit.
Sure.
We've made phenomenal progress in security. I think overall we're much more secure today, believe it or not, than we were, let's say, 5 or 10 years ago. We just haven't made enough progress because these other things have gone so fast. We haven't kept.
It's a nice way of putting it, Alan.
Yeah.
The way I look at it is that security was never a primary focus. It was compute optimization, it was network, it was basically application developments.
Yep.
But now security is becoming at the center. And if you look at perimeter, it just doesn't exist. It simply doesn't exist. So that's why a new framework has put in place that actually allows us to think about there's a better way to manage your applications, manage your users, manage your data centers or cloud infrastructure, and that is zero trust. And that's essentially the reason why people are following it. it's a different question altogether. Do they understand it completely? And is there any kind of a run book for it? I don't think so. There is one. So everybody talks about from their perspective what zero trust is.
Zero trust
and there's a little, exactly. So fundamental constructs of zero trust, if I look at it, there are three core pillars. One is identity. Identity and access management.
Right.
And this is not essentially identity of users. People get confused with that. It's identity of system, identity of network, identity of infrastructure, identity of all the elements, devices that come into picture. The second one is segmentation, which is principle in which you will be able to air gap these things. You'll be able to separate one network against another, one application another against another, one user against another. And third one is the pillar of access. So you segment these, but then you have users who are accessing these applications. So if you put in these three core principles, I think you're on a path towards zero trust.
So for those of you at home who've wondered about zero trust, I haven't heard it explained better than what you just did.
Thank you, Elton. Thank you.
Excellent. We should just take this 2 or 3 minute clip and use that when you look up zero trust in the dictionary, right? And that explains it well. It's interesting. I've been in security a long time, 25 plus years. And I've also always said that no one ever said security is not important. No one, well, some people have.
They have.
But, yeah,
You're
they
right.
have. But I always said, everyone said it was important, but their arms never reached their pockets.
Exactly.
And so it was always under-resourced, underfunded, under-prioritized. And we pay the price for it, don't we? So now, as we sit here, it is time for a new. I remember being here at RSA 10 years ago, 12 years ago. Remember the Jericho?
Oh yeah.
Remember that? We were going to deperimeterize the perimeter, micro perimeters, individual. The perimeters are gone.
Completely gone. The fort model is completely gone. You don't have a front door now.
No, there's the moat and castle, all of that, that's blown away.
Completely blown away.
So it was time for a new framework. And I never thought of as that's what zero trust is taking the place of. And it is.
It is.
Good stuff right there.
So, Ellen, I just want to add a couple of points here.
Sure.
When we look at the industry in general, and I have been for 25 years building products. I started as an engineer, then actually grew through the ranks, led some products as well. Before this, I was heading the products for VMware. We've gone through this journey. It's not like the difference here is when you look at security, there are elements which are important. The security on the build side, security on the runtime side. So you have a code security, you have application security, you have network security, you have vulnerabilities coming into picture. Then you say, okay, you have basically separations coming into picture. So there's a lot in security. Encryption becomes important part, intrusion prevention, intrusion detection, and everything seems to be important. Then the biggest challenge for CIOs and CISOs is, what do I pick?
Well, you know what they say, if everything's important, nothing's important.
Yes.
Right?
So it's important now to understand that there has to be a path in which certain frameworks are picked up. That's why you see Mr. President Joe Biden mandating zero trust, right? And this is now getting it all the way. That's why we actually are getting a lot of recognition, even on the federal side. We are called by the federal agencies. We closed actually an opportunity there because zero trust is becoming very important. It's no more educational stuff. Now the problem comes, how do I go about implementing zero trust? There is no prescriptive rule. If you look at network firewalls, if you look at vulnerability management solutions, if you look at threat hunting, there are prescriptive ways of doing it. Now, one vendor might actually claim, I do it better than somebody else. So from SIM to EDR to XDR to XDR, whatever that is.
Whatever tomorrow's hot one.
So I'm doing it better. But today, when you look at zero trust, there is no prescriptive approach. There is no methodology to it. A stage 1, stage 2, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. It's important for vendors like us to come together and basically give that prescriptive approach so that customers start actually taking it in smaller chunks and implementing it. Because the biggest concern I hear is we don't know enough about zero trust. Then they pick it like, okay, let me do something with identity, let me do something with segmentation, and let me do something with access control. Where we come into picture, we fundamentally start breaking down this problem in prescribing what needs to be done on the segmentation side. So educate them, especially around their environment. Help them progressively move towards the journey of segmentation. If you provide a segmentation like a flip, 0 or 1, you run into the risk of being disruptive.
Yeah.
And if your business gets disruptive, it doesn't matter what framework and how good that framework is, you're going to be kicked out. Say, it's not going to go well with the business leaders. So we provide a non-disruptive zero trust segmentation across any type of an application, be it a data center application where you run these legacy servers or Windows systems or Linux servers, or be it a containerized platform, it's Kubernetes platform, either in the cloud or in the data center, or applications like that are completely born on cloud. Your RD S3 is completely cloud native. And we are a single platform that delivers it. It's a SaaS platform across any type of an applications.
Love it. Excellent. So Rajesh, I know you guys recently announced was a cloud product.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Tell us a little about that.
So what we realized that essentially in data centers, there are a lot of tools already available. Some of them are actually on the NAC, network security. So there is a prescriptive way of actually handling security. But when you take to cloud, people are not even following 101s of security. So we felt that there's a need to actually help them into a fundamental constructs of misconfigurations, vulnerabilities, exploits, and take them towards that path of zero trust. So we released a product which is completely agentless. So all you have to do is basically, if you have a user account in Amazon or Google or Azure, we plug it in. In 15 minutes, you'll be able to see all your vulnerabilities, all your misconfigurations. And that is the start of the journey. Because first you need to handle, why is it connected to certain particular ports? Why is it connected to internet? What kind of an exploits you're having? What kind of vulnerabilities do you have? So those are 101 of the security solutions. That's why you see cybersecurity, cloud security becoming a very big buzzword in the world, and people are having enormous amount of conversations around it. Because you have to do these 101s of security before you take the path towards
before you run.
Yeah.
Rajesh, excellent. People who want to find out more about color tokens, what's the website?
I would just say go to www.colortokens.com and we'll be happy to serve you.
And tokens, by the way, is TOKENS, so it's colortokens.com. Hey, I want to thank you for coming on here, man. This has been amazing.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan.
I always love discovering new companies at RSA, but what I don't love is I don't talk to you again till the next RSA. So do keep in touch with us. We do Techstrong TV 3 days a week. As new stuff comes, the market continues to mature. Come on here and keep us posted.
We'd love to do that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Color Tokens here from RSA. We are live, wrapping up our day 4 coverage. We have a few more interviews. I actually might be stepping out. I've got some great folks coming in to host, and maybe the one and only Mark Miller. We'll be right back. Take a break here and stay tuned.
This is Techstrong TV.
Hey everyone, welcome back. We're here. Though we were here yesterday, this is officially day 1 of the Linux Foundation Open Source Summit. Yesterday was more of a satellite conference day, and we had like our friends from the Open SSF here and the FinOps Foundation, as well as the Open Telemetry Group. But today it's mainstream Linux Foundation, and the obligatory, I guess, Linus Torvalds keynote was this morning, which I caught a piece of. It's a little too crowded, the room, for me to stay there much longer. But I'm really happy that we have our first guest from this morning with us. And if you've watched Techstrong TV, you've seen Justin before. Justin Hutchings is with GitHub. And he's got a lot going on here today. He's going to tell us about it. Hey, Justin, welcome to our coverage of Open Source Summit.
Hey, Alan, good to see you in person finally.
Yes. Yeah, actually, this is the first time Justin and I see each other from here below. It's a funny world. You know, it's something Linus did say. They asked, well, you know, what effect has COVID had on Linux kernel development and everything? And he said, well, I'm happy to report, you know, the Linux kernel was not infected by COVID.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's the good news. The other good news is we are here in person, right?
Absolutely.
So tell us, what are you doing here?
Well, you know, I'm here representing GitHub and all the things we're doing around security. You know, we had the OpenSSF Day yesterday,
Yes.
which was a great sort of set of intro sessions for folks that haven't been involved in open source security for a while. You know, there are a ton of cross-company initiatives that are going on right now, whether it's around software bill of materials and trying to figure out how to, you know, make it so that software is inspectable by default, things around better vulnerability disclosure and improving interoperability, and then all of the, you know, the larger programs around like the Alpha Omega project that, you know, the OpenSSF is
Yes.
running for both depth security research on the most important projects and breadth research across, you know, as many open source projects as we can. These are all things that, you know, are really exciting and important for folks that use GitHub and, you know, folks that consume open source in other ways.
I think it's exciting for anyone who use software, period, right?
Yeah.
Because we're all, though we may not even realize it, many of the applications we are all using actually have open source in them, open source components, the kind of stuff that OSSF is trying to help with, and then it's really behind this whole bill of materials and software supply chain issues. You know, just for those who don't know out there, right, the OpenSSF has really gotten a boost. Well, they've gotten about $30 million in money too, which gives you a good boost as well. But it's gotten a boost by some, you know, big companies getting behind this initiative, one of which is Microsoft, which is obviously the parent company of GitHub.
Absolutely.
It's not until I'm hearing you talk here that I'm realizing how this is a GitHub initiative, or is it a larger Microsoft initiative as well?
I mean, it's both. You know, we look at a lot of the things going on in software security, and they're bigger than any one company can realistically tackle. You know, you look at some of the efforts going on software integrity, for example. Nobody can build that as a commercial product, because if you want every open source project to adopt security standards that are going to improve safety for everyone, it can't be a commercial project. And so foundations like the OpenSSF are the only place these kinds of conversations can really happen.
Yep.
Because it's neutral territory. Everyone is doing this for community benefit.
Absolutely. So it's GitHub, it's the larger Microsoft, but you know, look, let's not stop there. Google, we actually had, and I'm going to blank on her name, the chair of the OpenSSF, Jamie?
Jamie, yeah, from IBM.
We had her here, interviewing her yesterday, and that was great. So there are large companies and, you know, real muscle behind this. But I wanted to pull up something else, and I'd love your opinion on it, Justin, because I know you've been around the block.
Sure.
You know, when I first got into security about 25 years ago, there was a strong lineage, a strong tradition of open source security tools, right? I grew up and came into this when things like Nmap and Snort and Nessus and ClamAV, and you know, there were a lot of open source tools that we used for security, and there still are.
Yeah,
the ones I mentioned may have, you know, changed and evolved over the years, but really, I want to make sure people understand this. The charter or the mission of the OpenSSF, of the OSSF, the Open Source Security Foundation, is not necessarily to use open source software to secure everyone's software, but it's to make sure the open source software we're all using is secured.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And
and that's not no pun intended. That's not semantics, right? It's SEM, not SY. It's not semantics. It's an important distinction.
It's true. It's true. I mean, even where some of the security analysis tools out there may be proprietary, companies like GitHub are, making them available to security researchers to go and do the kind of assurance that folks need. You mentioned that open source is used in all kinds of commercial software. The latest data we've seen is 90% of software contains open source. And, when you think about that, it means, the random, they call it the, Nebraskaware or what have you, random project supported by some guy in Nebraska that, nobody knows, is important in so many of these pieces of software. And so, the job that we have is first raising awareness of how important open source is, making the tooling available, and really providing support and services to help make sure that open source can be secured. Because it's a huge ecosystem. Every one of the tools that we deal with is language specific. There's a lot of domain knowledge that's necessary to provide true security assurance, and we've got more diversity than ever in how people are developing software in terms of languages and tool chains. So it's a huge problem space.
So we do have more diversity in terms of languages and tool chains, but we lack diversity in some things, and I think the Nebraska issue you're bringing up, the Nebraska project's fine until everyone starts using it like Log4j,
right,
or something like that. And now all of a sudden we don't have so much diversity. We have like a single supplier supply chain.
Yep.
And so you get a defect in that, and it affects everything.
Yep.
Just as far as the eye can see. And I think that's something, I don't know if, and you would know better than me, is the OSSF, I always worry I put too many S's in.
It's all good.
Yeah. Is the OSSF doing anything about that where, I'm of the opinion it's not a good idea to only have one Log4j, for instance, right?
Sure.
And granted, the market is, if it's that good, it'll dominate.
Yeah.
But
I mean, there's a project that we've got in one of our working groups, which is a critical software project, which is identifying the pieces of software that everybody is using and trying to make sure that they have a sustainable funding model, maintainership model.
That's great.
And support. Because it turns out a lot of these things, even when they're part of foundations, they're not.
Have a very small,
Exactly. We talk sometimes.
10 core contributors and that's it.
Yeah, we talk sometimes kind of grimly about like a bus number, right? If somebody stepped out into traffic and got hit by a bus, would anyone be there to keep that critical piece of open source around? And the sad answer is too many projects. It's a bus number of one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just want to clarify, when you say our group, are you talking about GitHub or are you talking about OSSF?
Both. Yeah, we're all really concerned about these problems because, when we have a project that becomes unmaintained that a lot of people are using, the security researchers don't have anyone to contact to get patches.
Yeah.
And so things start to fall apart where you could potentially have someone trying to do a coordinated disclosure, waiting 90 days, hearing nothing, and then having to just disclose a 0 day on people because there's no patch available. And that is a worst case outcome for everybody.
That's the nightmare. I mean, and truthfully, that's one of the, it's actually one of the advantages of a project being accepted into Linux Foundation, right?
Yeah.
We've spoken many times on the show. We have sandbox and incubation, and eventually you got graduated projects. But, what moves a project through the various stages is that stability to eliminate the one, as you mentioned, the bus problem, right? How many maintainers are there? How many core contributors are there? How big is the community? Is it self-sufficient?
Yeah.
And that's a big change from, again, when I came up so I would say most of my career has been spent on what I call the big brother open source period where, look, most projects had one sponsor, owner, manager, whatever.
Yeah.
And they were responsible for the direction of the project as well as most of the code. And when they orphaned it, it was orphaned.
Mm-hmm. And I would say that's one of the things that, I really look for when we're picking projects that we want to engage in is whether they have a sustainable governance model. Because when you have one that's a sponsor-led project where, it's very clear who makes the decisions in this project and how their incentive model works, I really appreciate organizations like the LF and the OpenSSF putting in place open governance models where when multiple vendors want to collaborate on a solution, we've got a place where we're all equals. We can all come to the table and bring our ideas and get the job done. Because when you have those projects where it's really unbalanced, there is no guarantee that every stakeholder can get what they need to done through that project.
Or that one stakeholder doesn't abuse it for their own personal gain.
Yeah.
Right? Which is really, and that's one of the beauties of the whole foundational. Mm-hmm. It's not just Linux Foundation. There are others, right? Other foundations, but it's changed the game. But let's get real for a second. Again, you mentioned the Nebraska project.
Yeah.
I would love to see a study, almost like, we see studies in early childhood development. I'd love to see a study in early open source project development because the fact of the matter is, I've spoken to enough project creators to know really what happens is, I would bet in 9 times out of 10, they're working on something. They see what's available out there really is not good.
Yeah.
It's clunky, it's whatever, it's proprietary, whatever.
Right.
And they say, there's got to be a better way. Let's do something and make it available to everyone. And it's generally a really small group. It could be one person, maybe 2 people, right? And they develop something that works. They say, hey, let's put it out to the community. Maybe other people who have this problem, right? So this is the anatomy of an open source project. And so now a community starts saying and say, hey, this dude down in Nebraska, he came up with a solution to this problem that we've been banging our head on. We should use that. And then, we used it, we made an improvement, we should contribute it back. I mean, literally, like from little pebbles, giant boulders,
Absolutely.
This is how this works. So where on this timeline, Justin, do you say, okay, hey, it's time for some open governance stuff here?
It's a good question. I mean, I look at a lot of the open source projects out there. I liken the way that open source projects become successful to being like a viral TikTok, right? Mm-hmm. You weren't planning on 1 million people using your software.
Absolutely
you didn't expect that Google or Microsoft or one of these big firms was going to take it and run with it. But it happens. The algorithm, you struck lightning, whatever the case may be. And, I think it's important that there's a maturity model for these projects. We at GitHub have our GitHub sponsors system, so when projects start to get more successful and as maintainers lean in more on developing open source, we have a model for folks to chip in and fund that person and allow them to do this more and more as their day job. But there's definitely that inflection point where you go, okay, this is bigger than an individual. This ought to be a project that goes to a foundation. And I look at the success of organizations like the CNCF, where they've been really effective in convincing projects to go and add themselves and to join and get that support and governance and what have you, which I think helps a lot of the maintainers that ultimately they want to be there writing code, they want to be doing the right things. They're maybe not the sort of person that wants to run a committee. Mm-hmm. And that's the advantage that a lot of these organizations have.
Yeah, no, I that's a great point, which is, look, a lot of these guys and gals and people who kick off an open source project aren't that's not their gig.
Right.
Governing a project and dealing with communities and all of that good stuff. Though they're often very much, the bread and butter of the communities, right? They're not like sort of a different species or something.
Correct.
So, Justin, I got to confess, this white iPad sitting here, other than being a stand for my mask, I was supposed to open it and start a a watch to time this at 50 minutes. I don't know how long we've gone, but okay. But
hey, look at that.
But I'm not done. If you don't mind hanging, I got
Absolutely, I got
stuff.
some time. Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned the Alpha Omega project, which I'm vaguely familiar with OSSF. Why don't educate our audience a little bit?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a kitschy name, right? But the idea is that open source, there are really high profile projects that everybody's using. So that could be your Kubernetes, your Node project, any of those things that are really high profile. And those projects, really benefit from deep security research. We want to take experts in the field and give them the right tools and tell them to go do all of the research to go and find vulnerabilities. And so that's the alpha side. That is sort of like depth first on the most important projects. But obviously, we're not going to be able to scale that to the millions of open source projects that are in use across the entire software supply chain. And so the other side of this project is to develop reusable tools and practices to go and do automated analysis and triage of automated scanning across millions of projects. And there are two big challenges with that. First, the triage process is currently very human, and you need people that understand the code and understand their vulnerabilities. So we're developing out systems to make that more scalable.
Automated.
So that we can go to those projects, the Nebraska project, and say, hey, we're a group of security researchers from the OpenSSF, and we've run a bunch of analysis, and we've found what we think is a real vulnerability, and give them enough information that they can go and fix that.
Love it. Kind of reminds me almost of the SETI project, right?
Yeah.
We're just going to harness this wide net, if you will, but we need to automate the intelligence to sift through.
Yeah.
I love that. Hey, while we're here, I want to make clear, what's your role with OpenSSF at this point?
Yeah, it's a great question. So right now, I am just a general member. I participate in all the TAC calls. So TAC is the Technical Advisory Committee.
Yes.
And go there to help coordinate efforts between GitHub and the broader OpenSSF. Even without an elected seat or what have you, the governance model is such that anybody can show up at any time, be involved, and just help the organization be more successful. There are a ton of projects that we really care deeply about there. And we're constantly looking for ways to support the team and make sure that we're getting the right outcomes on open source security.
Well, interestingly, one of the people we interviewed yesterday was Ava Black.
Sure.
Right? From Microsoft. And they spoke about, I think they are on the TAC, if I'm
They
not
are,
mistaken.
yeah. They're one of I think they're the vice chair, actually.
Yeah. And keynoting here today. And it was an interesting insight into how sort of the TAC is functioning and what's going there. So it's all good stuff. Hey, I know we're over time, but I'm not done. Let's talk GitHub a bit.
Yeah, of course.
What's new with GitHub?
Oh, we've been doing so many things on open source security here lately. A couple things I'm really proud of. Back in February, we announced that we've opened our advisory database up as a full open source project.
Great.
And so, one of the problems with the CVE program today is everyone publishes CVEs. They go through MITRE, they go through us or wherever else. And the vast majority of CVEs are not actionable. There's no machine-readable identity for the software that's affected. And so we have a team of engineers that go and look at all the CVEs that come off the feed and add metadata that allows us to drive alerts.
Great.
This is an important process, but when you've got humans involved, there are going to be mistakes, there are going to be opportunities to fix things, especially as the threat landscape evolves on CVEs in the days and weeks after they're released. And so we've got a system in place now where anybody can go and make improvement requests. We still maintain that project, but at this point, what we want to do is open the world for anyone to create actionable mappings for CVEs. And the other project we recently did, sort of on the vein of software bill of materials, is a new API for our dependency graph that allows people to submit information about the dependencies they detected at build time, which is incredibly important. You
Sure
remember
is.
Log4j, the Maven ecosystem, Java overall. A lot of those projects are not fully statically analyzable. And so if you don't know when you built it, all of the things that got loaded transitively, you've got no chance at doing security assurance later. So this is an important step that allows us to plug that gap and drive the right alerts and the right outcomes for all those projects.
Love it. You know, I had the call there. You want to know my concern with the whole SBOM thing?
Please,
Justin?
yeah.
Everybody and their mom is recognizing this. I mean, the White House shone a light on it.
Sure.
I love to hear what you guys are doing. I've heard 24 different SBOM kind of, because I was at RSA, as you were a couple of weeks ago. I hope we don't all step on each other and just make a lot of noise here.
Yeah.
Without really coming up with an industry recognized standard.
Yeah.
That we could all use and kind of circle the wagons around.
I mean, the challenge with SBOM is, there's a risk of it becoming just a chore without good outcomes.
Yeah.
From my perspective, it's an interchange format. If you can get every tool in the tool chain, every build tool, every package manager to output an interoperable description of all the software that they touched and included in this, that goes a long way to helping security assurance tools alert and respond to vulnerabilities later. But the only way that works is if the data in the SBOM is machine readable, it's actionable, and it's cataloged in a way that allows it to be queried later. We run the risk right now of having a lot of people tick a compliance checkbox where they say, I cobbled together an SBOM and delivered it.
SBOM, check.
Exactly. But they're not useful. Because if you don't write the right software...
I think they become like the labels on the mattresses that if you take off, it's a federal offense.
Exactly.
Right? But other than that, whoever reads what's on those labels.
Yeah. And there are two different consumer groups for these. They're the folks that are producing them that hopefully are using them to power an internal security process, whether that's using, dependent alerts or some other tooling. And then there are the software consumers that are actually buying the software. Both audiences care about the state of what they're deploying. And today, across the ecosystem, everything's super immature. One of the things I'm pushing for this week, and I'm meeting with a bunch of folks from the language communities, is production of SBOMs at the source. Because today it's manual and it's not useful. But if we can get it at the source, then we have, truly the opportunity to build that software in at every step of the supply chain.
I really hope so, man.
That's the goal.
Yep. Anyway, hey, we've taken more of your time. I apologize for monopolizing you like this, but it's great to see you in person.
Absolutely.
I hope to see you in person at more events in the future, and we can still do Zooms, though, too.
Yeah.
All right.
Pleasure as always.
Always. Justin Hutchings, not only with GitHub, but also just a regular member of the OSSF doing his job, doing his duty here for the community. We're going to take a break. We're live in Austin at the Linux Foundation Open Source Summit. We'll be back in a moment.
Hi again, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed today's episode of Techstrong TV. I know I sure did. I mean, we had some great interviews with guests from around the world today, and alongside an episode of The Open Mainframe and another chance to see the first episode of Engineering the Change, we had lots of fantastic content. We'll be back again tomorrow, so we hope to see you then. And in the meantime, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. As always, stay strong. Techstrong.